Chapter 414, Pure-Blooded Ferocious Beast. Chapter 414, Pure-Blooded Ferocious Beast. What are you doing? Yang Jun was flustered and his voice was quivering. He forced himself to calm down and explain, I didn't do it on purpose. I just lost my footing and nearly fell down. That was how that beast managed to sneak in. Tang Yu and the others merely witnessed the frost leopard pouncing towards Su Zimo, but they did not know the reason why. When they heard that, everyone frowned. There was nothing wrong with Yang Jun's explanation, but if Su Zimo had reacted slightly slower earlier, his neck would have been bitten by the frost leopard. Su Zimo did not reply and merely looked calm with a hint of mockery in his eyes. Suddenly, Yang Jun felt like he had nowhere to hide. Su Zimo was reading his thoughts completely. Why you can't kill me? I'm the only 7 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator in the battle hall. Su Zimo, don't be impulsive. Yang Jun's eyes darted around and he panted slightly, getting more nervous by the moment. 2 ancient remnant beasts crept over stealthily. As if he had eyes behind his back, Su Zimo slashed with Blood Quencher in reverse, shooting forth a blood beam that slayed the 2 ancient remnant beasts on the spot. Glaring at Yang Jun, Su Zimo suddenly remarked, Do you remember what I told you before? I warned you not to harbor any designs on me or the next time. Your head will explode. Right after saying that, Su Zimo's eyes lit up and his figure flashed, creating a series of surreal afterimages in his wake. Yang Jun felt his eyes blur and by the time he wanted to retreat, Su Zimo had already arrived before him with a razor-sharp gaze that was filled with endless killing intent. After meeting Su Zimo's gaze, Yang Jun felt his eyes sting and tears flowed out, causing him to close his eyes instinctively. From there on, he never opened his eyes again. In front of everyone, Su Zimo slapped his backhand tightly against Yang Jun's cheek. Snap! Yang Jun's cheek sank in deeply and his skull shattered, distorting his facial features completely as everything else turned into meat sludge. His corpse was sent flying and a group of ancient remnant beasts fought to devour it before it even reached the ground. Even though Yang Jun was an Elixir Yang sect cultivator, even though he was a 7 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator of the Battle Hall, even though Su Zimo was only an outsider, no one from Elixir Yang sect objected to Su Zimo's actions. That was because all of them knew that they would have long been swallowed up by the ancient remnant beast stampede if not for Su Zimo. Let's carry on. Everyone, don't stop. After killing Yang Jun, Su Zimo turned around and led the cone-shaped formation forward once more. Although his green robes were stained with the fresh blood of countless ancient remnant beasts, Su Zimo seemed as if he had infinite stamina. At that moment, he resembled a god of war soaked in blood. His eyes shone brighter by the moment as he pushed forward, slashing Blood Quencher widely with valiance and ferociousness. Even so, there were Elixir Yang sect disciples that died continuously along the way, dragged into the beast stampede without a chance to escape. The cone-shaped formation shrank endlessly. Almost all the battle hall cultivators at the outer rim were injured and the formation might have long broken apart if not for the endless elixirs of Elixir Yang sect. The path ahead was pitch black and nobody knew when the beast stampede was going to end nor where the Elixir Pool sect ruins were at. All they could do was follow Su Zimo instinctively and venture deeper into the valley. Everyone was trying their best to hold out. It was as Su Zimo had said, with no way out, their only option left was to continue forward. Su Xiaoning followed the crowd forward endlessly. She would attack as well. However, given her cultivation realm, she might not be able to break through the defenses of the ancient remnant beasts even though she was using a supreme-grade flying sword. Night Spirit was silent and followed beside Xiaoning the entire time, looking nonchalant and lazy towards the beast stampede around it. Massive in size and pitch black all over, Night Spirit seemed to have melded into the night, leaving nothing but a pair of black eyes that shone with a disturbing glint from time to time. All of a sudden, in a mountain range far ahead, a series of rainbow lights shot out in succession, illuminating the skies and conjuring the scenery of a beautiful palace that was majestic and stunning. Instinctively, everyone paused in their tracks and looked over with agape mouths. Although nobody had seen what the Elixir Pool sect ruins looked like, everyone realized the instant they saw that fairytale-like palace that it was the place they were painstakingly searching for. Initially, Nobody had any direction, nor did they know where the Elixir Pool sect ruin was located. But at that moment, the lights in the distance became a beacon for all the cultivators in the valley. Rush. Kill with your might. The Elixir Pool sect ruin is right ahead. Although there was the guise of the night fog and nobody from Elixir Yang sect could see what was going on far away, they could hear faint shouts coming from their sides. They were not the only ones. Glass Palace, Malevolent Earth sect and the cultivators of all the other sects that entered the valley were being attacked by the beast stampede. Tang Yu declared with a joyful expression, "Everyone, hang on tight. The Elixir Pool sect ruins are right ahead. As long as we can reach it, we'll be safe." All the ancient sect ruins possessed immense defensive power and remnant beasts did not dare to enter at all. Right now, there were only 500-odd people left in Elixir Yang sect and they were all exhausted. However, they were invigorated upon hearing Tang Yu's words and their stamina seemed to have recovered. Su Zimo's expression was calm and did not feel much joy. Something was amiss. The beast stampede before them was formed with ancient remnant beasts. There must be traces of pure-blooded ferocious beasts behind them. How else would such an orderly ancient remnant beast stampede be formed without the intimidation of pure-blooded ferocious beasts at the back? Roar. Suddenly, at the base of the Elixir Pool sect ruins mountain range, a shuddering roar sounded, causing the entire beast stampede to pause for a moment. A gigantic demon beast appeared at the back of the beast stampede. Filled with pitch-black fur, it resembled a demon hound as it opened its mouth and spat out flames for hundreds of kilometers, incinerating everything in its path and burning countless cultivators into ashy. Everyone was shocked. "It's a Huo-Do." Su Zimo narrowed his gaze and remarked slowly. Uncle Liang nodded as well with a grim expression. "That's right, it's a Huo-Do." The Huo-Do was a pure-blooded ferocious beast that was extremely violent and could spit flames. With luscious fur, it resembled a lion with an ugly face. A pure-blooded ferocious beast had appeared. So what if it's a pure-blooded ferocious beast? It's just one. If we join forces, we'll definitely be able to kill it. Far away in the fog, the voice of Shui Yang from Malevolent Earth sect sounded, filled with killing intent. Woo-hoo-hoo. Suddenly, the voice of a boy crying sounded from the foot of the mountain. Su Zimo's expression changed as he frowned. Could it be? Woo-woo-woo. The next moment, the childlike voice turned shrill and piercing. Many cultivators could not handle it and groaned as they clutched their ears, bending over. The figure of a demon beast appeared under the illumination near the Elixir Pool sect ruins. With 9 heads, it resembled a hydra as it opened its mouths and cried like infants. Pure-blooded ferocious beast, 9 neonate. Uncle Liang exclaimed. Chapter 415, Supreme God Strength. Chapter 415, Supreme God Strength. Pest, pest, pest. Before the cries of the infant could subside, a series of strange sounds came from the other side, resembling the hiss of a snake. However, the sound was really loud. Looking over subconsciously, everyone was shocked and took a deep breath of cold air. There was truly a snake beneath the mountain range. The gigantic snake coiled up from the ground and stretched its upper body, revealing a height over 1,000 feet tall and scales the size of a basin. The snake's head could almost reach the top of the sky as it looked down at everyone with cold and vicious eyes, twisting the clouds with every breath. Swoosh! An evil gust of wind blew by and the gigantic snake swayed its forked tail that looked like a pair of hooks. They glistened coldly and emitted a foul smell. It was obvious that they were poisonous. The long tail swept across the ground and the hooks at its tip pierced the bodies of nearly 100 cultivators, causing blood to flood. Many of those cultivators reacted quickly and managed to crush protection talismans first. However, their protection talismans were like paper against the hooks of the gigantic snake and could not even withstand a single blow. Many of the cultivators hung on the hooks with blood dripping down in a ghastly sight. They struggled and yelled as they were slowly sent into the mouth of the gigantic snake. With a squirm of its throat, the gigantic snake swallowed almost 100 cultivators in one gulp. Pure-blooded ferocious beast, hook snake. Even Su Zimo's expression was turning slightly grim. The current situation was obvious. If they wanted to get to the Elixir Pool sect ruins, they would not only have to fight a way out from the beast stampede, but get through the defenses of the 3 pure-blooded ferocious beasts as well. Furthermore, all 3 pure-blooded ferocious beasts were clearly at peak foundation establishment and had terrifying strength. This was far beyond what Suzumo had expected. It would be difficult if he wanted to kill 3 pure-blooded ferocious beasts given his current strength. Unless he chose to take on his demon form. After assuming demon form, Suzumo would become an extremely powerful existence that was even more terrifying than the pure-blooded ferocious beast. Screech! All of a sudden, a high-pitched roar pierced through the clouds at the horizon. A massive bird soared through the skies with its golden body that was extremely piercing in the night. It had 2 horns on its head and spread its 100-feet-wide wings, looking down with a sharp gaze. With a swoop, the bird opened its sharp claws and tore 2 cultivators apart, splattering their meat and blood everywhere. All the cultivators who entered the ancient battlefield were completely defenseless against the pure-blooded ferocious beast. After killing dozens of cultivators, the bird screeched again, looking excited with its cruel gaze. Could that be another pure-blooded ferocious beast? An Elixir Yang sect cultivator asked with a trembling voice. Uncle Liang nodded and gulped. That should be a Gu bird, one of the ancient pure-blooded ferocious beasts. It's said that the bloodline of an immortal bird, the Golden Rock, flows within it. Tang Yu took a deep breath to compose herself and said slowly, "That's the 4th pure-blooded ferocious beast." Uncle Liang whispered, "Young master, retreat. Even if I have to give up my life, I'll make sure you get to escape." Previously, Uncle Liang did not waver even against the beast stampede formed by the ancient remnant beasts. However, upon seeing the 4 pure-blooded ferocious beasts, he finally had the intention to retreat. Nobody in their group was a match for the pure-blooded ferocious beasts. Even if they could break free from the obstructions of the pure-blooded ferocious beasts, it would be a miracle if even a tenth of their current 500 cultivators could survive. Tang Yu looked hesitant and turned towards Suzumo instinctively. Sighing, Uncle Liang lamented internally, "Although that lad's methods are sharp and powerful, he isn't a match for the pure-blooded ferocious beast still." At that thought, Uncle Liang urged again, "Young master, we have a chance to escape now that the pure-blooded ferocious beasts haven't turned their attention towards us yet." If. Dong. 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 Before he could finish, Uncle Liang was interrupted by a series of dull sounds. It was mighty and strong, as if someone was beating the heavenly drums. The next moment, a gigantic white ape leaped out from behind the mountain range. Over 100 feet tall, its massive red feet stomped heavily on the ground, giving off deafening bangs. The ground was torn asunder and revealed a series of dark ravines. Rearing its head and roaring, the gigantic ape drummed against its chest with its fists, giving off the dull sounds. Right after, its gaze turned towards the group from Elixir Yang sect, baring its fangs in a bloodthirsty manner. Not good. Uncle Liang was alarmed. It was probably too late even if they wanted to retreat now. They had already been targeted by a pure-blooded ferocious beast. The 5th pure-blooded ferocious beast had appeared. A white head with red feet and the appearance of an ape. The only pure-blooded ferocious beast that fit this description was a Zhu Yang. Roar. The Zhu Yang roared in the direction of Elixir Yang sect and suddenly extended a massive palm, smashing the mountain range near it. Instantly, the mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. Everyone was dumbstruck. That was the power of a pure-blooded ferocious beast. It could crush mountains and split the earth, swallowing rivers with its mighty energy. Hugging a gigantic mountain top with both arms, the Zhu Yang flung it towards the area where Elixir Yang sect was. Although the mountain top did not seem huge against the massive figure of the Zhu Yang, it seemed to cover the skies as it was thrown over. That was no mountain top. It was an entire mountain. Everyone merely felt their vision turn dark as the gigantic mountain crashed down towards them with a mighty aura, filling the skies with debris. Even ancient remnant beasts would turn into sludge if they were crushed by that mountain. Hurry, run. Unable to withstand the pressure, someone shrieked and turned to run, wanting to get out of the radius of the mountain before it landed. Tang Yu wanted to retreat, but she realized that Suzumo was rooted on the spot, looking at the descending mountain with a raised head as though he was scared stiff. Hurry, let's go. Feeling her heart clench, Tang Yu hurriedly advanced and grabbed Suzumo by the arm, wanting to drag the latter away. Suddenly, Suzimo let out a long howl and the sound of a tsunami roared from within his body. Tang Yu froze in her tracks and her expression changed slightly. Channeling his bloodline, Suzimo stomped on the ground heavily before leaping up, welcoming the descending mountain with both arms. Boom! When Suzimo's hands met the bottom of the mountain, gravel flew everywhere with a deafening sound. His clothes were completely torn, revealing a pair of muscular arms with swelling muscles that intertwined like liquid steel. Splash! Pang! 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 Tsunami blood and tendons like a bowstring. This was the limit of Suzimo's strength without assuming demon form. The mountain was still descending. Against the descending mountain, Suzimo seemed incomparably small. In fact, he wasn't even as large as the spilling gravel and looked laughable, like an ant trying to shake an ancient tree. However, the mountain was stopped just as it was about to land on the ground. An upright figure stood between the mountain and the ground, straight as a pencil with unbuckling knees and a fervent gaze, holding up an entire mountain with his supreme god strength. Notwithstanding the many Elixir Yang sect disciples, even the Zhu Yang who was watching from afar was dumbfounded, as if it could not understand what was happening. Taking a deep breath of air, Suzimo channeled strength into his arms and lifted the mountain above his head, flinging it back in the opposite direction. Chapter 416, Severely Wounding the Zhu Yang. Chapter 416, Severely Wounding the Zhu Yang. Along its way, the mountain splattered many ancient remnant beasts and an empty path appeared in front of them. The momentum of the mountain did not stop as it continued charging towards the Zhu Yang. The Zhu Yang had a violent temperament and was easily enraged. Roar! Upon seeing that, it was furious as it stared with its bloodshot eyes. Panting out streams of steam, it pounded dully against its chest repeatedly. The ant before it had not only stopped its attack, but was even retaliating. That was a complete provocation of its dignity. Gripping its fists tightly, the Zhu Yang punched violently towards the incoming mountain, as if it was trying to quell the anger in its heart. Boom! A deafening boom reverberated through every corner of the valley. The mountain was smashed into pieces by the Zhu Yang's fists, turning into huge rocks that fell from the sky as dust billowed. Everyone was scared out of their wits as they opened their mouths with shocked expressions. That power had exceeded everything they ever knew. The only people capable of fighting against the pure-blooded ferocious beasts were probably only 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. The mountain exploded and gravel flew everywhere. The dust was too thick, and coupled with the cover of the night fog, nobody saw that the Zhu Yang had to stagger backwards a few steps even though it managed to crush the mountain. The flesh on its gigantic fists had split open with fresh blood flowing. It was injured. The scarlet blood triggered the Zhu Yang's ferocity entirely. Roaring into the skies, the Zhu Yang charged in the direction of Elixir Yang sect before the dust and smoke had even cleared. Deep pits were dug as it stomped on the ground with its massive feet, creating spiderweb-like cracks in its wake. The ground shook and the mountains trembled. Naturally, there was no way that Suzimo thought a mountain was enough to injure a Zhu Yang severely. If you guys find an opportunity later, rush forward with all you've got and don't turn back no matter what. Turning around, Suzimo instructed Tang Yu before taking a deep breath and charging forward with his blood quencher, ready for a massive battle against the incoming Zhu Yang. He did not expect to kill the ancient ferocious beast, but at the very least, he wanted to divert the Zhu Yang's attention to allow Elixir Yang sect to run through its obstruction. Right then, Suzimo suddenly felt something arching his arm gently. He turned over and was slightly stunned. Before he knew it, Night Spirit had run to his side, bringing Xiaoning along with it. At that moment, its head was lowered as it rubbed against his arm with its cheek in an intimate manner. It blinked its black eyes with a flicker of anticipation. As Night Spirit grew older, it also turned mature and colder. Such emotions were rare to see by now. In the past, Night Spirit was like a small black dog that curled in Suzimo's embrace daily. As such, it would behave coquettishly as such from time to time. Suddenly, Suzimo's heart skipped a beat as he recalled how Night Spirit hid in his embrace when the two of them escaped to the primordial ruins. This was the same expression that Night Spirit had back then. At that time, it devoured half of a dragon egg. You're thinking of. Pointing at the Zhu Yang that was rushing over from afar, Su Zimo raised his brow slightly and did not continue. Growl. Night Spirit cried out softly and licked its lips. How could Su Zimo not know what Night Spirit wanted when it was practically drooling by this point? Normally, Su Zimo would not let Night Spirit leave Xiaoning's side easily. However, it was rare for Night Spirit to make such a request and he could not bear to reject it. Before this, Night Spirit would not touch the flesh of any spirit beast or demon. Even the meat of ancient remnant beasts did not interest Night Spirit and it would only consume a little. Su Zimo could not figure out what Night Spirit liked to eat and he could not possibly hunt for dragon eggs for it repeatedly. Now, he vaguely realized that Night Spirit's food might be pure-blooded ferocious beast. Su Zimo was secretly shocked. What was Night Spirit's background for it to deem pure-blooded ferocious beasts as food? Could it be even more terrifying than pure-blooded ferocious beasts? When he recalled the greedy expression on Night Spirit's face back in the primordial ruins when it looked at the dragon egg with fervent eyes, Su Zimo found himself getting increasingly curious towards Night Spirit's background. Be careful, he instructed as he patted Night Spirit on the head. Without replying, Night Spirit melded into the night in a flash, vanishing without a trace. Akin to a ghost in the night, Night Spirit moved silently and nobody apart from Su Zimo noticed what was going on. At that moment, there were still ancient remnant beasts charging at them and tearing at their formation. The group from Elixir Yang sect huddled together, defending with all their might. In front of them, the Zhu Yang was already far from the Elixir Pool sect ruins and had entered the night fog, disappearing from everyone's vision. The only thing they saw was a pair of bloodshot eyes that resembled lanterns floating in the dark approaching rapidly. The heavy footsteps were getting closer as well. Each time it sounded, everyone felt their hearts skip along with it. Tang Yu tried her best to open her eyes and look forward. She could seemingly make out a musky and mighty silhouette in the hazy night. It was the pure-blooded ferocious beast, Zhu Yang. Taking a deep breath of air, a resolute glint flickered through Uncle Liang's eyes as he whipped out a flying sword from his storage bag, ready to strike. Su Zimo's expression was calm and his gaze was like water without any ripples at all. All of a sudden, the pair of lanterns in front of them came to a stop and the sound of the Zhu Yang's footsteps disappeared as well. Graw. The Zhu Yang seemed to have encountered a situation as it shrieked heartbreakingly while its lantern bloodshot eyes shook repeatedly in midair. Su Zimo hollered, "Charge! Now!" Tang Yu was stunned. Now! Wielding Blood Quencher, Su Zimo sliced up two ancient remnant beasts that pounced at them and led the charge, pulling Xiaoning with his left hand. Su Zimo did not know what Night Spirit's true strength was at this point and whether it could kill the Zhu Yang. However, he knew that it was the best opportunity for them now that the Zhu Yang had no time to spare. Oh! Oh! As if it had gone mad, the Zhu Yang howled insanely and had clearly descended into a frenzied state. In the night fog, nobody from Elixir Yang sect could see what was happening to the Zhu Yang. They could only make out a vague black shadow on the pure-blooded ferocious beast's back with the faint light that was shining from its scarlet eyes. Those sharp claws extended stealthily with a cold shimmer in the night. Poof! There was a crisp sound. After emitting a stream of blood, one of the bloodshot eyes turned dark. Pest! The cultivators gasped in shock. One of the Zhu Yang's eyes had been blinded by that mysterious black shadow. Or. Yelping in immense pain, the Zhu Yang screamed as it barged forward crazily. Some ancient remnant beasts that could not dodge in time were rammed to death on the spot, while some others were trampled into meat sludge tragically without any corpse left behind. With the Zhu Yang severely wounded, the beast stampede was dispersing. Chapter 417 Arriving at the Ruins. Chapter 417 Arriving at the Ruins. Although everyone else could not see clearly against the night fog, Su Zimo could. In that short while, the Zhu Yang had already gained dozens more wounds on its body that were so deep its bones could be seen. Its flesh was torn and its white fur was already stained with fresh blood. The Zhu Yang grabbed Night Spirit that was on its back and yanked the latter down. However, Night Spirit had already dug its claws into the Zhu Yang's flesh long ago. By yanking Night Spirit down, the Zhu Yang caused a large piece of its flesh to be ripped off with fresh blood spraying everywhere. Graw! The Zhu Yang had never suffered such injuries before and roared furiously as it grabbed Night Spirit and smashed it onto the ground. If that smash was realized, Night Spirit would definitely suffer even with its physique. In midair, a black shadow darted by. Poof! It was Night Spirit's tail, piercing through the Zhu Yang's arm. In that instant, blood gushed out in a stream and one of the Zhu Yang's arm was crippled on the spot. It fell limply to the side and the Zhu Yang's strength decreased. After rolling on the ground, Night Spirit got up safely and glared at the Zhu Yang coldly while licking its lips. Su Zimo heaved out a sigh of relief. In that short while, the Zhu Yang had already lost an eye and arm and there were dozens of wounds on its body that bled non-stop. It panted heavily. Initially, blood was a trigger for its ferocity. But now, the Zhu Yang was afraid. It was way too severely injured. Ever since it was born, it had never experienced such serious injuries. The Zhu Yang sensed a hint of death. Looking at that black figure that was countless times weaker than it close in, the Zhu Yang felt an inexplicable sense of fear well in its heart while shattering his gut. That fear seemed to originate from the depths of its bloodline, from deep in the memories of its lineage. As if recalling something, the Zhu Yang shuddered. Its lone eye was filled with fear as it turned and fled without hesitation. Su Zimo shook his head secretly upon seeing that. The Zhu Yang might have had a chance of surviving if it chose to fight Night Spirit head-on with its life. But now that its back was exposed to Night Spirit, it was dead for sure. Su Zimo led the Elixir Yang sect group ahead, sprinting in the direction of the Elixir Pool sect ruins. The beast stampede had dispersed, leaving only a couple of scattered ancient remnant beasts that no longer posed much of a threat. As the Zhu Yang fled, the path ahead was clear. On the other side, there were 4 other pure-blooded ferocious beasts that were keeping Glass Palace, Malevolent Earth Sect, Puppet Sect, Thousand Crane Sect and all the other sects outside. Elixir Yang Sect was the first to arrive at the Elixir Pool Sect ruins. Apart from Su Zimo who could still stand, Tang Yu and the rest were slumped on the ground, drenched in sweat. Their faces were pale as they panted heavily. Everyone felt deeply exhausted after the journey. The exhaustion came not only from the body, but also from the spirit. The pressure of advancing at the boundaries of death where death was imminent was enough to make everyone feel exhausted. Thankfully, they survived. They rushed out of the encirclement of the ancient blood mosquitoes, broke free of the ground dragon's pursuit, paved out a path from the beast stampede and arrived at the Elixir Pool sect ruins against the obstruction of the pure-blooded ferocious beasts. Everyone felt surreal. Everyone was laughing. It was an indescribable joy that came from surviving a calamity. Everyone revealed a hint of gratitude and reverence in their eyes as they gazed at the only figure that could remain standing among the crowd. If not for that man, they would have died a long time ago. Even Uncle Liang could not deny that he had underestimated Su Zimo still. When he saw the ancient remnant beast stampede, Uncle Liang expected that the best outcome was if 10% of their 1,000 cultivators managed to survive. When he saw the pure-blooded ferocious beasts blocking the way, he already had the intention to retreat. He truly hadn't expected that more than 400 Elixir Yang sect cultivators would have managed to arrive at the Elixir Pool sect ruins alive under Su Zimo's lead. Tang Yu raised her head slightly and looked at Su Zimo's back view with a dazed expression. Just who in the world are you? Suddenly, she was filled with immense curiosity towards Su Zimo. What was that mysterious beast that fought with the Zhu Yang? I don't know, I didn't manage to see it clearly. It's fortunate that the mysterious beast appeared to help us or we would have been doomed. Some of the Elixir Yang sect disciples discussed softly as they consumed elixirs to recover their strength. After resting for a short while, Tang Yu stood up and clapped, declaring, "Everyone, now is not the time to rest. Let's check out what treasures Elixir Pool sect has." "All right," everyone replied. The cultivators supported one another and stood up, entering Elixir Pool sect under Tang Yu's lead. Despite the passage of time, many of Elixir Pool sect's palaces and buildings remained intact. Before long, Xiaoning suddenly tugged Su Zimo's sleeve. He turned around and saw her pointing to her chest where a mysterious elixir furnace was placed. "There's a reaction?" Su Zimo asked. "Yes, it's getting hotter," Xiaoning replied. Su Zimo nodded. The mysterious elixir furnace was most likely related to elixir pool sect of the ancient era. Everyone continued advancing while Su Zimo turned around and frowned slightly. Night Spirit had not returned yet. Logically speaking, this period of time should be enough for Night Spirit to kill the Zhu Yang. However, Su Zimo could not find any trace of Night Spirit at all. He did not think too much about it. In such an environment, even if Night Spirit met with danger, it would be able to escape unscathed given its alertness and method. The largest palace in Elixir Pool Sect was its Elixir Refinement Hall. The Elixir Refinement Hall was right in front of them, especially striking in the ruins with its majesty and height of over 100 feet. Even from afar, everyone could still smell a faint medicinal fragrance. Every single treasure in the Elixir Refinement Hall was something that Elixir Yang sect wanted. If the recipe for the Meridian Unlocking Elixir was preserved, it could only be in a single place, the Elixir Refinement Hall right before them. Speeding towards the Elixir Refinement Hall, everyone arrived at its entrance before long. Tang Yu raised her brow slightly as she gazed at the palace before her. It was shrouded with a mysterious light that contained faint blurry words. A seal was still existent. Reaching out, Tang Yu touched the door of the hall gently. The moment her palm reached the surface, it was repelled by the power of the seal. She was not allowed to enter. This was a little tricky. Frowning, she started thinking of a strategy. A cultivator came forth and said, "Can't we join forces to dispel the seal on the surface of this hall? This seal has existed for countless years without being destroyed. How could it be dispelled so easily?" Pondering for a moment, Uncle Liang said slowly, "Legend has it that the Elixir Refinement Hall is Elixir Pool Sect's most important inheritance ground. Other than legacy disciples, nobody can enter easily. By the looks of it, that legend should be true. Elixir Pool Sect has disappeared since the ancient era. How could there be any legacy disciples left?" A cultivator shook his head. Chapter 418, Consciousness Inheritance. Chapter 418, Consciousness Inheritance. Right then, Su Xiaoning walked out slowly from the crowd with a dazed expression, as if she had entered a trance, and walked slowly towards the Elixir Refinement Hall before them. Her chest shone with a mysterious brilliance. As she approached the hall, the brilliance intensified and turned dazzling, almost enveloping Xiaoning's figure entirely. "This is..." Everyone was dumbfounded. Standing by the side, Su Zimo did not stop her. Back in the capital of Great Ju, he had already noticed that the elixir furnace was extraordinary. After entering the ancient battlefield, his conjecture was further verified. Upon arriving here, Su Zimo could almost confirm that the mysterious elixir furnace had a deep connection to Elixir Pool Sec. Right in front of everyone, Xiaoning walked towards the hall step by step, reaching out with her jade-like hand to touch the seal of the hall gently. To everyone's surprise, she was not repelled by the seal. On the contrary, the mysterious emblems that revolved on the surface gathered towards Xiaoning continuously, as if they were attracted by something. "Consciousness inheritance," Uncle Liang exclaimed. All the cultivators present let out envious expressions when they heard that. In the ancient battlefield, elixirs and treasures were not the most precious things. The true opportunities came from obtaining the inheritance of ancient mighty figures and sect. In truth, the Saber Mountain Spirit Sea was one of those. In certain sects, true secret skills were not preserved in the form of cloth, bamboo slips or manuals, just in case they were leaked to outsiders. There was a possibility that the Elixir Refinement Hall before them contained many elixir recipes of the ancient era. However, the true secrets of Elixir Pool Sect must definitely be within that consciousness inheritance before them. In other words, Su Xiaoning was the only one that obtained the true secrets of Elixir Pool Sec. "Why is it her?" someone could not help but ask. Tang Yu replied, "Xiaoning must be in possession of an extremely important token of the Elixir Pool Sect. The Elixir Refinement Master that this token belonged to must have been a legacy disciple of Elixir Pool Sec." Stroking his long beard, Uncle Liang said with great gratification, "There's a chance for our sect to restore the former glory of the Elixir Pool Sect after this girl obtains its inheritance and joins our sect." Su Zimo was truly relieved as well. Initially, the The reason why Elixir Yang's sect took Xiaoning in was because they wanted to rope him in for his strength. He was worried that she would suffer after joining Elixir Yang's sect. But now, that worry was completely unfounded. After obtaining Elixir Pool sect's inheritance, if Xiaoning were to cultivate diligently after joining Elixir Pool sect coupled with the help of the mysterious Elixir Furnace, she would definitely turn out to be a top-tier Elixir refinement master with unlimited potential in the future. Tang Yu came to Su Zimo's side and whispered, "Don't worry, fellow Daoist Su, after returning to the sect, I'll definitely take Xiaoning to the sect master along with Uncle Liang to report about this matter. Our sect master is an Elixir refinement grandmaster with high standards. Even until now, she has only accepted one personal disciple. I'm sure she'll definitely take a liking to Xiaoning and take her under her wing." Su Zimo nodded. An Elixir refinement grandmaster. Although Elixir Refinement Masters and Elixir Refinement Grandmasters sounded similar, their statuses were starkly different. There wasn't a single Elixir Refinement Grandmaster in the entire Great Zhou dynasty. Above Elixir Refinement Masters were Great Elixir Refinement Masters and Elixir Refinement Grandmasters were after that. Many Elixir Refinement Masters have never been on the verge of reaching the level of a Great Master in their entire lives, let alone be a Grandmaster. In the field of weapon refinement, there were also the titles of Great Master and Grandmaster. Although Su Zimo had the help of his spirit perception and had even managed to refine a perfect spirit weapon, he was still only a weapon refinement master. He could only turn into a great weapon refinement master after becoming a nascent soul and gaining the capabilities to refine dharmic weapons. In other words, in order for one to become a great master, they had to be accomplished both in their craft and their cultivation realm. The sound of clothes tearing through the air sounded behind them. More cultivators had broken through the blockade of the pure-blooded ferocious beasts and were speeding towards the Elixir Pool sect ruins. "Everyone, stand in formation and protect Xiaoning," Tang Yu ordered decisively. The most important thing for them right now was to ensure Xiaoning obtained Elixir Pool sect's inheritance without being interrupted. Regardless of whether those arriving were friends or foe, Elixir Yang sect would not allow a single mistake to happen in the inheritance process. Before long, around 20 cultivators rushed over, looking wretched and filled with wounds. They were all cultivators of Thousand Crane sect. Shocked, Su Zimo hurriedly patrolled the crowd. He only let out a sigh of relief after seeing that Lung Ru was fine as he walked over with Tang Yu. "Sister Man, are you all right?" Tang Yu withdrew a few bottles of elixirs and handed them over. Feng Man looked listless and was covered with wounds. She thanked Tang Yu for the elixirs and hurriedly consumed them. Although she had elixirs as well, the effects of hers could not compare to those of Elixir Yang sects. On the other side, Lung Ru was also badly injured and looked even more pale. However, her expression was cold as ever and a slight warmth only flickered through her eyes upon seeing Su Zimo. Su Zimo also had some elixirs given to him by Tang Yu in his storage bag. Because they were not perfect grade, he wouldn't consume them. As such, he took them all out and handed everything to Lung Ru. She did not decline or stand on ceremony with Su Zimo. After the bloody battle on the Long Street, the friendship between them had far surpassed that of ordinary fellow disciples. Feng Man consumed the elixirs and rested for a moment before she noticed the group from Elixir Yang sect standing in front of the Elixir Refinement Hall. Shocked, she exclaimed, "There's so many of you." "What?" Tang Yu froze. Sighing, Feng Man chuckled bitterly. "It's already a blessing that we're able to survive against the pure-blooded ferocious beasts. There's only 20-odd of our 1,000 cultivators that are left. To think that you guys have more than 400 cultivators remaining, that's incredible." Tang Yu looked at Su Zimo without saying anything. If he hadn't fought at the front for the entire journey, Elixir Yang sect would have been annihilated long ago. "Also, we got lucky." Feng Man sighed and said, "Initially, the pure-blooded ferocious beast, the Jiyu bird, blocked us and we couldn't get away. Later on, it seemed like it was attacked and couldn't handle it. We only managed to get here by seizing that opportunity. Even then, there's only these few of us left." "Ah, we saw the same thing," Tang Yu replied hurriedly. "The Zhu Yang was blocking our path but out of nowhere, a mysterious beast appeared and injured the Zhu Yang severely. That was how we managed to get over here successfully. Suzimo's heart skipped a beat. Initially, he was confused over why Night Spirit hadn't returned after so long. After hearing Feng Manman's words, he gradually understood. After killing the Zhu Yang, Night Spirit went to kill the Jiyu bird as well. Before he could finish his thoughts, Suzimo heard Little Fatty's voice from not far away. That's bloody lucky. That 9 neonate was way too scary. It spits fire and water that severely injures or kills upon contact. We can't even get close to it. Luckily some black thing appeared out of nowhere and killed it, or we would have all died there. Shijian remarked as well. Yes, we saw that too. After killing the 9 neonate, I think that black thing went off for the other 2 pure-blooded ferocious beasts, the hook snake and the huodo. Suzimo's mouth cramped up when he heard that. Chapter 419, Thank you, Night Spirit. Chapter 419, Thank you, Night Spirit. Bro, you guys are here too. That's good, that's good. Little Fatty's eyes lit up when he caught sight of Suzimo and the others. He ran over immediately and his loose robes couldn't cover all his trembling fats. All 6 of them managed to arrive here despite their close encounters. Naturally, that was a cause for joy. Feng Manman cupped her fists. Thousand Crane Sect will not be laying a hand on anything in this elixir refinement hall. We'll head in and check out if there are any ancient talisman manuals that have been preserved. Yes. Tang Yu nodded. Lung Ru bid farewell to Suzimo and the others. Tomb Sect and Puppet Sect did not bring many cultivators into the valley to begin with, and now, they were left with even less. Little Fatty and Shijian followed the commanders of their respective sects and left to venture deeper into the ruins in search of treasures and opportunities. At that moment, a black shadow flashed not far away like a ghost. It crept stealthily to Suzimo's side without anyone noticing it at all. Night Spirit had returned. There was a bloody thing in its mouth, resembling a ball of meat as the stench of blood filled the air. Suzimo took a casual glance and paid no attention initially. But right after, as if he thought of something, Suzimo turned back and looked carefully, causing his eyes to twitch uncontrollably. It was the Zhu Yang's head. Its neck area was clearly torn off by sharp claws and it was missing an eye. Biting on its snapped head, Night Spirit had returned just like that. Hey! Isn't that Night Spirit? Tang Yu smelled the stench of blood and turned to see Night Spirit with a bloody thing in its mouth, standing beside Suzimo. Yes. Suzimo replied without saying anything more. Tang Yu frowned slightly. Suddenly, she realized that something was amiss. Night Spirit seemed to have disappeared for a period of time, right after the Zhu Yang appeared. However, everyone's attention was drawn to the Zhu Yang and they were all trying their best to escape. No one paid any attention to whether Night Spirit was among them. Tang Yu could not remember clearly as well. No matter how she tried, she could not recall Night Spirit with them during that period of time, as if it had vanished into thin air. Hesitantly, she asked, Fellow Daoist Su, was Night Spirit with us the entire time? Yes, it was. Suzimo nodded with a calm expression. Then, what's that? Pointing to the blood lump in Night Spirit's mouth, Tang Yu asked in confusion. Suzimo replied ambiguously, I don't know either. It must have bitten that off the corpse of a random ancient remnant beast on the way here. By now, the Zhu Yang was completely disfigured. Its flesh was torn in a mess and its head was dyed red with blood. There was no way Tang Yu could recognize it. Tang Yu was even more confused after asking. Pondering for a moment, she could not come up with a conclusion and let the matter go for the time being. After Tang Yu left, Suzimo turned to Night Spirit and whispered, Why did you lug that head back? Why didn't you eat it outside? Growl. Putting the Zhu Yang's head on the ground, Night Spirit extended its paw and pointed to it before pointing to Suzimo. If anyone else saw it, they wouldn't have understood what Night Spirit meant. However, Suzimo knew and he asked with a frown, You mean to say that's for me to eat? Night Spirit nodded and licked its lips with a trace of reluctance on its face. Suzimo smiled and shook his head. You can have it. You haven't eaten much good food all these years. Although Suzimo devoured meat and drank blood back in Kanglang mountain range for his demonic cultivation, it was for the sake of survival. He was a human after all. Suzimo truly did not have much appetite when he looked at that blooded head. When Night Spirit saw that Suzimo had no intention of eating, it rubbed its head against him before stretching out its paw and piercing a hole on top of the Zhu Yang's head. A moment later, a milky white gooey liquid flowed out from the hole, giving off a fragrance that made one's appetite whetted. This is... Blinking, Suzimo seemed to have thought of something. It was the Zhu Yang's brain. Back in the ancient manuals of Ethereal Peak, there was a remark at the end of the section about the Zhu Yang. An ancient mighty figure ate its brain for food and praised, "The fragrance in your mouth is endless." It was clear how delicious the Zhu Yang's brain was for an ancient mighty figure to give such an evaluation. Night Spirit used its tongue to lick the brain that seeped out and revealed an intoxicated expression. After a while, it lifted the Zhu Yang's head again and handed it over to Suzimo, indicating to him that he could just suck from the hole. Night Spirit was becoming more and more humane and was clearly at the peak of Foundation establishment. It could condense an inner core at any time and transform itself, taking on human form. Suzimo felt a sense of warmth in his heart but still shook his head nevertheless, saying with a smile, "Eat it. I'm still not used to eating something like this." Night Spirit turned to look at Suzimo with slight disbelief. It could not understand how someone would not like a delicacy as such. Night Spirit only picked up the Zhu Yang's head after ensuring that Suzimo was truly unmoved. Sucking strongly from the hole in the head, Night Spirit drank the Zhu Yang's brains cleanly with a couple of gulp. It even licked its lips wistfully, yearning for more. Growl. Crying once more, Night Spirit swayed its tail and nimbly circled it in front of Suzimo. Suzimo focused his gaze and saw an egg-shaped object pierced on the tip of the tail. It was around the size of a fist and contained an emerald green liquid beneath its skin. "This is the hook snake's gallbladder?" Suzimo pondered for a moment before probing. Nodding, Night Spirit handed the gallbladder in front of Suzimo, indicating for him to eat it. If the Zhu Yang's brain was considered as a rare delicacy, the hook snake's gallbladder was considered as one of the rarest herbs in the world. A single drop of the hook snake's gallbladder juice would ensure that an ordinary mortal could live a long life healthily without any ailments. For cultivators, their immunity systems would improve significantly after consuming it, allowing them to be resistant to most poison. Suzimo fondled Night Spirit's head and whispered, "Night Spirit, have it yourself. I can be considered immune to all poisons now, so I don't need it." Night Spirit went silent. After a moment, its eyes lit up and it raised its head in Xiaoning's direction, crying a couple of times. "Are you saying that you want to feed Xiaoning the gallbladder?" Suzimo asked. Night Spirit nodded and made a few gestures. Suzimo understood. Night Spirit was saying that it failed to protect Xiaoning from being poisoned the previous time round and that it wanted to give this to her as an apology gift. Xiaoning would not have to worry about getting poisoned in the future after consuming the gallbladder. Suzimo remained silent. Be it the Zhu Yang's head or the hook snake's gallbladder, both of them were the most precious parts of those two beasts respectively. After retrieving them, Night Spirit did not think of itself but him and Xiaoning. It wanted to share the delicacy with him and help Xiaoning improve her constitution. The reason why Night Spirit acted the way it did was because it treated Suzimo and Xiaoning as its closest kin. Suzimo went up and hugged Night Spirit around the waist, patting it on the back while saying softly, "Thank you, Night Spirit." Chapter 420, Grade 2 Elixir Pool. Chapter 420, Grade 2 Elixir Pool. A few more cultivators sped over from the direction of the valley, each of them panting with lingering shock. Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect were among them. However, those two major sects had it even worse. Apart from Pei Chunyu, Glass Palace only had 8 people left and each of them were filled with injuries and had pale expressions. It was the same for Malevolent Earth Sect. In reality, if Night Spirit had not killed the other 4 pure-blooded ferocious beasts, it would have been difficult for the others to survive. The only way out for them would be for a sealer to kill the pure-blooded ferocious beasts by invoking their powers as golden cores. This time round, Suzimo finally caught sight of the sealers of the 2 major sects. An elderly man in golden robes stood behind Pei Chunyu. Although his hair was grey, His gaze was burning with dominance and his skin possessed a sparkling luster similar to a baby. On the side of malevolent earth sect, a skinny old man in black robes followed closely behind Shui Yang with a dark gaze resembling a gowl. The two sealers had appeared. Among the major factions, not all the super sects would send sealers out with their teams. For example, Poison Sect, Puppet Sect and Tomb Sect of the four unorthodox groups did not send sealers. Pei Chunyu and the others arrived at the vicinity of the Elixir Refinement Hall and revealed shocked expressions when they swept their gazes across. More than 400 Elixir Yang sect disciples had survived and made it here. Although Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth sect coveted the treasures within the Elixir Refinement Hall as well, they did not dare to force things given the number of people that Elixir Yang sect had. After a slight delay, Glass Palace, Malevolent Earth sect and some other itinerant cultivators headed into the depths of the ruins. Su Zimo gazed at the cultivators of the sects leaving thoughtfully. A moment later, he patted Night Spirit on the head and whispered, "Stay here and guard Xiaoning. I'll check out the depths of the ruins." "Are you really going to fight for the Meridian unlocking elixir?" Tang Yu frowned when she noticed Su Zimo's intention of heading into the ruins. "Xiaoning's receiving the inheritance here and in order to prevent any accidents, we can't leave. If you head in alone, you don't stand a chance against all the elites of those major sects. I must get my hands on the perfect Meridian unlocking elixir." Su Zimo replied with conviction and a resolute gaze. Initially, he wanted to head into the depths of the ruins with everyone after Xiaoning received the inheritance. However, by the looks of things now, Xiaoning wouldn't be able to complete the inheritance process within a short period of time. Yet, Glass Palace, Malevolent Earth sect and other sects have already ventured into the depths of the ruins. Su Zimo could not wait any longer. "You have to be careful. They have sealers with them. Don't force yourself if the situation doesn't look good." Tang Yu said, "I reckon that Xiaoning will definitely inherit the recipe for the Meridian unlocking elixir as well. If you don't rush things, you'll definitely get your chance to consume a perfect Meridian unlocking elixir in the future." "Got it." Su Zimo nodded and in a flash, a pair of spirit wings appeared behind him. He soared into the air and sped into the depths of the ruins. Su Zimo had no idea where the Meridian unlocking elixirs were located within Elixir Pool sect as well. At that moment, he looked down with the help of the ethereal wings and relied on his shocking eyesight to survey the place continuously while his ears twitched intently to pick up news from the surroundings. "East side, hurry. The elixir storage is there. Ah, hurry over." Vaguely, Su Zimo caught wind of some intermittent conversations. Standing in the air, he looked towards the east and saw a series of spirit lights shooting into the air from a certain area with many cultivators heading over. There's no mistake. In a flash, Su Zimo vanished from where he was. East of the Elixir Pool sect ruins. From above, it could be seen that there were gigantic jade bottles made from rocks lying on the ground, resembling cave abodes. The bottlenecks were the entrances of the caves where words were written. Although they were blurred, they were still recognizable. Grade 1, Grade 2, Grade 3. It was very obvious. The Grade 1 cave abodes would naturally contain Grade 1 elixirs. Grade 2 cave abodes would contain Grade 2 elixirs. Grade 3 cave abodes. There were a total of 8 jade bottle-like cave abodes here. In other words, there was a chance that the 8th jade bottle-like cave abode would contain Grade 8 elixirs. Elixirs that were consumed by golden cores were only at Grade 3. As such, what sort of cultivators were the elixirs meant for? Of course, despite knowing that, the many cultivators that were gathered outside the cave abodes could watch helplessly. That was because all the entrances had seals on them. Even after countless years, the seals were still perfectly preserved. None of the cultivators in the ancient battlefield could dispel the seal of the Grade 3 elixir cave, let alone the Grade 8 elixir caves. At that moment, everyone's gazes were fixed on the Grade 2 elixir cave abode. That was because the Meridian unlocking elixir was a Grade 2 elixir. Everyone, no matter what, we have to first dispel the seal of the entrance. After a moment, Pei Chunyu stood out and declared loudly, "The sooner we dispel the seal, the sooner we can enter the cave abode and obtain the elixirs that we need. If we waste too much time here, More cultivators will arrive and we'll all get less elixirs. That's right, let's join forces to dispel the seal first. I agree. As for the elixirs inside, everyone can fight for it after we enter the cave abode. The cultivators agreed. Bang! Boom! Bang! Under Pei Chunyu's command, many cultivators summoned their flying swords at the same time, striking repeatedly at the entrance of the Grade 2 elixir cave. A series of lights appeared and shimmered continuously at the entrance, radiating brightly. As time passed by, the light gradually dimmed. The seal's about to be dispelled. Everyone, let's work harder. Some cultivators yelled excitedly. The sealers of Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect did not do anything, merely watching coldly from the sidelines. Although sealers would not be devoured by the dimension if they did not use their powers as golden cores, they were already old and their bodies were failing. As such, they would not do anything casually. At their age, each time they did something, it would be equivalent to shaving off the last bits of their life's essence. It was similar to old mortals in their 90s. If they took care of their bodies, they could still live a couple years more. However, if they did anything overly vigorous, they would die before long. Bang! 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 Yet another series of explosions occurred and cracking sounds echoed from the entrance. A moment later, the light barrier shattered. The eyes of the cultivators lit up as they rushed forward at the same time, swarming towards the entrance. Although the cave abode was sealed for countless years, there was no rotten smell within it. Instead, it was filled with an invigorating medicinal scent. The masses charged forward and before long, their vision opened up in the depths of the cave. A gigantic spirit pool resided at the end of the cave abode. Many jade bottles were floating on it, looking dense and compacted. Each of those jade bottles contained elixirs. The reason why the elixirs were not rotten after thousands of years was because they were nourished by the spirit liquid. This was a true elixir pool. Chapter 421 Success. Chapter 421 Success. Clear words were etched on the surfaces of the jade bottles. Spirit Regeneration Elixir, Mystic Young Elixir, Snow Lotus Elixir, Great Essence Nourishing Elixir. The elixirs that everyone were familiar with were all available. Some of the elixirs that had been lost in Tianhuang mainland were also floating in the elixir pool. In fact, there were even some elixirs that nobody heard of. However, none of this was important. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the elixir pool, searching for a particular elixir, the Meridian Unlocking Elixir. Over there. Someone with a keen eye caught sight of a Meridian Unlocking Elixir's jade bottle and exclaimed. Swash! 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 A series of figures bolted over, reaching out for the Meridian Unlocking Elixir in the elixir pool. Scram! Pei Chunyu shouted and channeled his bloodline, and crystal-like rays of light covered his skin. Punching in reverse, he ruptured the head of a cultivator beside him. Completely helpless to resist, a headless corpse fell from midair before the person could make a single sound. At the side, someone withdrew a flying sword and pierced towards Pei Chunyu's head. Without dodging or retreating, Pei Chunyu extended his palm and caught the flying sword in the middle of it. His palm was unharmed. Pei Chunyu's spirit weapon was a pair of gloves and it was at perfect grade. He did not have to fear his opponent's flying sword at all. Mph, someone the likes of you wishes to fight with me for the Meridian Unlocking Elixir? Laughing coldly, Pei Chunyu exerted force with his palm and snapped the superior-grade flying sword into two, pushing in reverse. Glass Palace cultivators possessed immense strength and the snapped sword turned into a beam of light, piercing the other cultivator's chest, spurting a stream of fresh blood. Yet another person was dead. Displaying his might, Pei Chunyu's fists were like a pair of huge hammers and no one could stand in his way. Although some of the itinerant cultivators were at 7 Meridian Foundation establishment as well, they were no match for Pei Chunyu. A single punch from him was enough to snap their tendons and bones, causing their bodies to explode. In the blink of an eye, Pei Chunyu had killed almost all the cultivators around him. On the other side, Shui Yang wielded a bone spear that was filled with blood. His expression was grim and he did not hold back at all, killing dozens of cultivators consecutively and staining the elixir pool red. The successors of the two major sects, Malevolent Earth Sect and Glass Palace, stood right at the front of the elixir pool and were on killing sprees. Nobody dared to advance at all. The two of them exchanged glances and leaped at almost the same time, extending their arms to reach for the jade bottle containing the meridian unlocking elixir. You have a death wish. Pei Chunyu's eyes were filled with killing intent as his hands changed trajectory, grabbing towards Shuiyang's wrist. Although Shuiyang was the fiend heir of malevolent earth sect, he could not compare to Pei Chunyu in terms of physique. If he was grabbed by Pei Chunyu, that hand of his would be crippled. Left with no other choice, Shuiyang retreated. His eyes flashed with malice as he remarked coldly, "If I can't get my hands on it, you don't have to dream about doing so either." As he retreated, a mysterious spear tip popped out from Shuiyang's ribs. Filled with a thick malevolent aura, it shone brightly with spirit light and stabbed towards Pei Chunyu's palm. Although Shuiyang's bone spear was not a perfect spirit weapon, it was basked in malevolent aura day and night for dozens of years, and its might could not be underestimated as well. The collision of the two spirit weapons, coupled with the strength of the both of them, caused a golden and black burst of light to spread from the surface of the elixir pool. Piak! 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 There was no way the delicate jade bottles floating in the elixir pool could withstand that amount of force as they shattered, spilling out countless elixirs that choked everyone with a rich medicinal aroma. Among the countless elixirs, there was a handful of meridian unlocking elixirs that were of excellent quality. Almost all of them had 4 patterns and were at supreme grade. Almost at the same time, their gazes landed on one of the meridian unlocking elixirs. Although that meridian unlocking elixir was obviously smaller than the others, it had 5 dreamy elixir patterns on its surface. A perfect meridian unlocking elixir. Both of their gazes turned fiery and their breathings intensified. Given their potentials, they had an 80% chance to unlock their 8th spirit meridians at one go if they obtained the perfect meridian unlocking elixir. Right now, apart from Pei Chunyu and Shuiyang, no one dared to close in to the vicinity of the elixir pool. Pei Chunyu had a serious expression as he said slowly, "Shuiyang, there's only one of that meridian unlocking elixir. You had better not fight me for it." Hee. Shuiyang revealed a strange smile. "You want me to back off with just a few words of yours? Everything is dependent on our own capabilities. I'll see for myself just how strong your glass heart sutra is. All right, I'll let you have a taste then." Before his words were finished, Pei Chunyu strode forward and sped towards Shuiyang. Pei Chunyu had a strong physique and specialized in melee combat. Shuiyang would definitely lose if the former closed in. Naturally, Shuiyang understood that as well as he flicked his wrist and channeled spirit energy furiously into the bone spear. In the blink of an eye, the bone spear broke into 11 pieces. Previously, outside Shentian City, the malevolent earth sect cultivator, Di Xing, who was sent to assassinate Su Zimo, only had 10 pieces to his bone spear. Shuiyang's bone spear had an additional piece. Go! Using malevolent earth sect's defensive weapon technique, Shuiyang controlled 11 pieces of the bone spear that were shrouded with black malevolent aura, surrounding Pei Chunyu and blocking the latter's path forward. Although Pei Chunyu was strong, he only had a pair of fists. When he saw the 11 pieces piercing over, Pei Chunyu slapped his storage bag and withdrew a glass metal shield that expanded and blocked in front of him. Boom! A loud bang sounded when the 11 pieces struck his glass metal shield. Both of them had used their full strength. Pei Chunyu staggered backwards and Shuiyang's 11 bone spear pieces were reflected. Instantly, a blank area appeared between them. Swash! In that moment that the both of them fought head-on and retreated, a figure sped over with lightning speed, leaving a series of illusory afterimages in midair. In a flash, that figure had already arrived above the elixir pool, scooping the perfect meridian unlocking elixir into his palms with ease. The crowd was in an uproar. It was too fast. Even the spectating cultivators could not react in time, let alone Pei Chunyu and Shuiyang. Furthermore, the timing of the person's appearance was way too precise. It was during the moment of Pei Chunyu and Shuiyang's clash where both parties were still recovering from their momentums. Just like that, the both of them watched as the perfect meridian unlocking elixir was stolen by someone else. How dare you? You must have a death wish. Enraged, Pei Chunyu and Shuiyang's eyes shone with killing intent that was about to spew out. The cultivators watching were also curious as to who it was that dared to snatch food from a tiger's mouth. That action was equivalent to offending two super sects, Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect. The cultivator that arrived later to steal the perfect meridian unlocking elixir paused momentarily and stood in the air without anything beneath his feet. Wearing green robes, his expression was calm as a pair of spirit wings flapped gently behind him. It's him. Su Zimo. A wave of shock and astonishment could be heard from the crowd. Pei Chunyu's expression darkened instantly as he put away his glass metal shield. A murderous aura gathered between his brows and he said slowly, Su Zimo, I couldn't be bothered with you back in Shentian City. But since you wish to die today, you can't blame me. TSK, TSK, TSK. Shuiyang's gaze was ice-cold as he chuckled sinisterly. Hell has no gates to begin with, but you're the one who chose to barge in. Even Elixir Yang sect won't be able to save someone that's hunted by both Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect. Chapter 422, Complete Suppression. Chapter 422, Complete Suppression. Standing in the air, Su Zimo's gaze was sharp as a knife as it lingered for a moment on Pei Chunyu and Shuiyang's faces. Suddenly, he threw his head back and laughed into the skies with absolute arrogance. The two of you actually think you can kill me at your level? The cultivators in the cave abode were dumbfounded in shock. Back in Tianhuang mainland, Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect were recognized by the masses as super sects and were renowned for their powerful combat strengths. The 5 heretical doctrines and 4 unorthodox groups were similar to those two sects in terms of status and reputation. However, disciples of the Immortal, Buddhist and Fiend sects were the strongest when it came to combat strength. Su Zimo made a name for himself after the bloody battle on the Long Street. Later on, he destroyed the Poison Sect faction in the ancient battlefield single-handedly and his reputation skyrocketed further. However, everyone still felt that Su Zimo was far inferior compared to the disciples groomed by super sects with impressive foundations such as Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth Sect. Right after, Su Zimo's next sentence caused an uproar. Pei Chunyu, Shuiyang, the two of you have tried to kill me countless times. Don't think of leaving today, die. Putting away the perfect meridian unlocking elixir, Su Zimo withdrew Blood Quencher from his storage bag slowly. Flicking his wrist, the saber shone brightly with spirit light and buzzed. Su Zimo really doesn't know what's good for him. That's right. One of them is the successor of Glass Palace and the other's the fiend heir of Malevolent Earth Sect. What does an unknown cultivator have to challenge those two strong cultivators? He's a frog in the well at the end of the day. I doubt he even knows about sealers. Many cultivators shook their heads and looked at Su Zimo like they were looking at a fool. Normally, sealers wouldn't attack. However, they would naturally come forth if the successors of their sects were in danger. That was the reason why even Pei Chunyu and Shuiyang did not dare to claim that they could kill one another. If they were pushed to their limits and the sealers were forced to act, both sides would suffer immense losses and neither would benefit. But now, with the sealers watching, Su Zimo's declaration of killing Pei Chunyu and Shuiyang merely attracted mocking laughs. The sealer of Glass Palace was a golden-robed old man. Interesting. The golden-robed old man's eyes flickered with mockery and disdain. The sealer of Malevolent Earth Sect, a skinny old man, smirked in ridicule. Ha 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 ha. As though he had heard the greatest joke in the universe, Pei Chunyu laughed repeatedly. Su Zimo, you can't recognize the situation even now. Today, I'll let you know just how strong immortal sects are. Here. Shuiyang laughed sinisterly. Su Zimo, it's your honor to die in the hands of the successors of immortal and fiend sects. Immortal and fiend sects? All of you bullshits can't even fight against my saber. Su Zimo roared and 6 spirit meridians shone beneath his robes, channeling his spirit energy to the maximum. With a flash, he lunged towards Shuiyang at an extremely fast speed. Even under such circumstances, Su Zimo still dared to attack first with a torrential aura. You must have a death wish. Although Malevolent Earth Sect also had a body tempering technique, it was weaker compared to top body tempering sects such as Glass Palace and Overlord Palace. If Pei Chunyu was the one that charged over, Shui-Yang would definitely retreat and keep his distance. However, when he saw that it was Su Zimo, Shui-Yang did not retreat or avoid, knowing that he had a higher cultivation realm. Gripping his bone spear tightly, the spirit energy within his body that was tainted with malevolent aura shot forth, piercing towards Su Zimo in midair. Hiss! The bone spear in Shui-Yang's hands coiled in strange circular arcs, resembling a viper. It made a strange sound when it pierced through the void. Many cultivators were secretly shocked when they saw his spear technique. Notwithstanding the power of Shui-Yang's pierce, that spear technique alone was enough to awe. Everyone felt that they were in a difficult situation and could only retreat. Swash! At the same time, Pei Chunyu moved. Fast as lightning, his eyes shone with a shimmering luster and killing intent as he leaped forward and pounced towards Su Zimo's back. Pei Chunyu's plan was very clear. If Shui-Yang's spear killed Su Zimo, Shui-Yang would be in a state where he was recovering from his momentum and would definitely reveal openings. Pei Chunyu would be able to seize that moment of weakness to injure Shui-Yang severely. On the other hand, even if Shui-Yang did not manage to kill Su Zimo, he could make use of that opportunity to kill the latter while stealing away his storage bag. No matter the outcome, Pei Chunyu would be the biggest winner. At that moment, he did not realize that he missed out on a possibility. On the battlefield, after images of the spear were everywhere along with malevolent aura, and it was difficult to identify between reality and illusion. Su Zimo was in midair when suddenly, the spirit wings behind his back vanish. Everyone was shocked when they saw that. To them, the only way for him to escape was to utilize his spirit wings and dash away instantly. Even so, he might not be able to escape from Pei Chunyu's pursuit entirely. But now that Su Zimo's spirit wings were gone and he was falling freely, it meant that he had no way of escaping and had to fight Shui-Yang head-on. Although it was only a slight movement, the atmosphere in the battlefield changed miraculously. Descending from the skies, Su Zimo gripped his saber like a fearless god and suppressed Shui-Yang completely in terms of aura. When they saw that, the expressions of the two sealers changed. Without waiting for them to think further, Su Zimo shouted, "Countercurrent." A huge saber descended from the sky. Splash! The bloodlight expanded and the sound of a sea tide surged. Alarmed, the two sealers exclaimed, "Saber force." Wrong. The golden-robed old man's expression, and he murmured, as if he had just thought of something, "That saber technique resembles." "See calming 5 stances," the skinny old man muttered. Instantly, a piece of news that they had heard more than 10 days ago flashed through the minds of all the cultivators. The disappearance of the Saber Mountain Spirit Sea. Another cultivator had obtained the Saber Emperor's inheritance after 1,000 years. So, it was him. It was no wonder why Su Zimo disappeared for a period of time after the bloody battle the Longstreet and was able to uproot Poison's sect with unparalleled dominance upon his return. Everything made perfect sense all of a sudden. Everyone's doubts vanished. Against Countercurrent, Shui-Yang's spear technique seemed extremely crude and weak. All the spear shadows dissipated instantly, revealing the true spear. Clang! Blood Quencher collided heavily against the bone spear and billions of arcs of lightning surged within the blood beam, drowning and cleansing the malevolent aura on the bone spear. Suppression. It was a complete suppression in terms of aura, technique, bloodline, and power. Shui-Yang yelled in pain as his palms split open with blood flowing out. Instantly, the bone spear flew from his hands and was repelled. Turning into a cold streak of light, it pierced deeply into the wall behind him and the end of the spear trembled endlessly. Crack, crack, crack. Against the impact of that terrifying slash, Shui-Yang's protection talisman was shattered instantly as he collapsed, spitting out a mouthful of blood. He was severely injured after a slash. Chapter 423, I Hate to be Threatened. Chapter 423, I Hate to be Threatened. In reality, if not for his protection talisman, Shui-Yang would have been killed by Su Zimo's slash. Even then, Shui-Yang was injured and sent flying after his protection talisman was shattered against the slash. The cultivators in the cave abode were shocked when they saw that. That was an outcome that none of them expected. Nobody imagined that the fiend heir of malevolent Earth sect would not be able to withstand a single slash against Su Zimo. Although part of it was because Shui Yang underestimated his opponent, the strength that Su Zimo displayed once again refreshed everyone's impression of him. Who could have imagined that he was the one to obtain the Saber Emperor's inheritance? Furthermore, he had even managed to cultivate to the level of force. The skinny old man that was initially idle by the side strode a half-step forward with a changed expression, wanting to interfere. But right after, when he saw the shadow behind Su Zimo's back, he was relieved and stood back. Pei Chunyu was now at Su Zimo's back. Given their proximity, no cultivator would be able to fight head-on against a Glass Palace disciple of the same cultivation realm without being disadvantaged. Furthermore, Su Zimo had just released Countercurrent and his power was at its weakest right now. The power of force took an immense toll on Foundation establishment cultivators and Su Zimo could not use it repeatedly as well. Therefore, both sealers knew that Su Zimo would either be severely injured or dead given Pei Chunyu's precise timing of attack. Let the body be like glass, transparent inside out and cleansed of impurities, turning indestructible. Pei Chunyu's eyes shimmered like glass as he chanted. With every single word, his aura would change. In the end, there was a mysterious luster covering his muscles, flawless like glass, that raised his aura to a maximum point. Die. Pei Chunyu's black hair fluttered without any wind. Arriving behind Su Zimo, he shouted as he whirled his gigantic fists and smashed down viciously at Su Zimo's head. The gloves that he was wearing were perfect spirit weapons. 5 spirit lights shone with a bedazzling glow and illuminated the entire cave abode. Pei Chunyu's palm was like a blazing sun that shone brilliantly, charging at Su Zimo with a furious killing intent. With a dark gaze, Su Zimo glared at Shui Yang who was sent flying, seemingly indifferent towards Pei Chunyu who was behind him. Bang! Boom! Boom! All of a sudden, the terrifying sound of tsunamis gushed from within Su Zimo's body. Accompanied with the sound of rumbling thunder, it sent shivers down one's spine. Pang! 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 Without even turning back, Su Zimo channeled his bloodline and his tendons shifted. He slashed in reverse against Pei Chunyu's fist with a surging blood beam. Clang! The saber and fist collided into a deafening roar, causing sparks to fly. Indeed, Su Zimo could not release his saber force continuously. However, after attaining lesser mastery of the orifice clearing section, his skin, flesh, tendons, bones, marrow, organs, and 7 orifices now formed a major heavenly cycle and he was sufficiently strong with just the power of his bloodline and body. Grunting dully, Pei Chunyu's expression changed starkly as he retreated repeatedly. His feet dug into the ground with every step, creating a deep footprint. The confidence in Pei Chunyu's eyes was gradually replaced by terror. He truly hadn't imagined that Su Zimo would have the energy remaining to force him to retreat even after inflicting a severe injury on Shui Yang. Although he was not injured and his palm was merely trembling slightly with a vague pain, that was enough to have him shocked. This meant that he was definitely not Su Zimo's match if they were to exchange blows when the latter was in his peak condition. He wouldn't have a much better outcome compared to Shui Yang's current condition. In that instant, countless thoughts flashed through Pei Chunyu's mind. But at that moment, Su Zimo made use of the momentum created by clashing against Pei Chunyu to rebound himself, speeding faster and vanished from where he was. His figure howled forward like a sprinting stallion. He was so fast that the void was buzzing wherever he passed. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo arrived in front of Shui Yang. The tides had turned entirely. Even the 2 sealers did not manage to react, let alone the Foundation establishment cultivators that were watching. After he was sent flying by Su Zimo, Shui Yang wanted to retreat with the opening created by Pei Chunyu's attack. He wanted to consume elixirs before joining hands with Pei Chunyu to kill Su Zimo. However, that thought had just flashed across his mind when he heard the sound of Su Zimo and Pei Chunyu clashing. The next moment, his vision blurred and Su Zimo had already closed into him. It was too fast. How could this be? Shui Yang was horrified out of his wits. Even if he was in his peak condition, he was not Su Zimo's match given this distance, let alone the fact that he was now injured. You! He merely said a single word when Su Zimo's massive palm covered his vision. Without his bone spear by his side, it was too late even if he had other spirit weapons in his storage bag. Shui Yang could only prop up his arms instinctively to try and block against Su Zimo while seizing the opportunity to escape. Snap! Su Zimo did not show any mercy as he crushed Shui Yang's arms immediately upon contact. The latter's bones protruded from his flesh with blood and flesh in a terrifying sight. Ah! Shui Yang exclaimed tragically. The next moment, Shui Yang's voice stopped abruptly. Su Zimo descended upon Shui Yang and gripped his throat, lifting the latter up to defend in front of him. Phew! 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 At the same time, a few bone spears shot over. A few bone spears that were shooting over stopped in their tracks immediately upon seeing that Shui Yang was in Su Zimo's hands. Not far away, the skinny old man had already attacked and wanted to kill Su Zimo with his bone spear to rescue Shui Yang. However, he was still a tad too late. At that moment, Shui Yang was in Su Zimo's hands and the skinny old man did not dare to be reckless, wary of the consequences. The situation was now in a deadlock. Since the start of the battle, everyone had subconsciously held their breaths in concentration and had already forgotten to breathe. It was only now that they heaved out long breaths. The way everyone looked at Su Zimo changed. Shui Yang was not an ordinary cultivator of malevolent earth sect, but the fiend heir. A dignified fiend heir was gripped by Su Zimo by the throat just like that, eyes bulging and tongue sticking out slightly with a purplish expression without being able to say anything. Shui Yang's arms dangled lifelessly by the side with his bones crushed, clearly already crippled. With his arms crippled, Shui Yang would most likely not amount to much in the future even if he managed to survive. Su Zimo, let him go and we can put aside the feud between you and malevolent earth sect temporarily. I can also spare your life. The skinny old man said slowly with a grim expression. Oh! Raising his brow, Su Zimo laughed. The skinny old man continued, you don't have to worry. As a golden core, I'll definitely stick to my words. And if I don't let him go? Su Zimo's tone was indifferent as he asked with a fake smile. The skinny old man's tone was frosty. If you don't let him go, you'll definitely die today, is that so? Retracting his smile, Su Zimo replied coldly, I hate to be threatened by others. Snap. There was a crisp sound. Su Zimo crushed Shui Yang's throat and flung the corpse on the ground casually, as though he had just done something extremely insignificant. Chapter 424, Dimensional Tear. Chapter 424, Dimensional Tear. Instantly, the cave abode went so silent that a pin drop could be heard. Many cultivators looked at the corpse that laid on the ground like a dead dog in absolute disbelief, unable to say anything. It was too ruthless. The fiend heir of malevolent earth sect was slaughtered just like that. Even though immortals and fiends have been irreconcilable since ancient times, even Pei Chunyu would not dare to show no mercy in the presence of a sealer. The sealer was bound to make a move if the fiend heir dies. Everyone looked at Su Zimo as though they were looking at a dead man. Sealers were all elderly who had reached the end of their lives. However, even 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators were no match for the power of sealers. Golden Cores and Foundation establishment cultivators were on completely different levels. The moment one formed a core, their destinies no longer belonged to the heavens and their lifespans would increase to 500 years. In terms of strength, it was a complete suppression. The wrath of a golden core was not something that a Foundation establishment cultivator could deal with. Many cultivators started to back off slowly, trying to get as far away from Su Zimo as possible lest they were implicated. Pei Chunyu and the golden-robed old man of Glass Palace exchanged glances when they saw this. Both could see the joy in the other's eyes. This was the best situation for them. Glass Palace could just sit this one out and reap the spoils later. No matter which side stood victorious, Glass Palace would be the biggest winner. Good. Very good. The skinny old man from malevolent earth sect's expression darkened completely as he glared at Su Zimo with malice. The aura that he emanated turned increasingly terrifying and sent shudders down one's spine. Narrowing his gaze, Su Zimo held Blood Quencher and faced off against the skinny old man without losing out in terms of aura. He had fought a real golden core before and had even managed to kill him. Previously, Suzimo had the help of Night Spirit, his right bloodbone palm, various environmental and external factors. That was how he managed to kill a golden core that was at the end of his lifespan. In terms of actual strength, Suzimo was definitely no match for a golden core. But now, he had a chance of winning. This was the ancient battlefield, and the moment anyone uses the power of a golden core, a dimensional tear would occur to reject them. In other words, if the sealers wanted to make use of their powers as golden cores, they only had a single chance to attack. As long as Suzimo could survive that attack, the sealers would be the ones to die. Die. The skinny old man raised his foot and lightly landed. In that instant, the earth and mountains shook. Under countless gazes, a huge crack appeared on the ground and extended continuously, arriving beneath Suzimo's feet in an instant. Swoosh! A pair of spirit wings appeared and Suzimo soared into the skies while conjuring a spirit art with his hand. He touched his middle finger and thumb, creating the sign of a seal that possessed endless might. Fiend Suppression Seal. The crack on the ground was deep and dark, shooting forth with an ink-like black malevolent aura. Rumbling, a gigantic palm was formed and it grabbed towards Suzimo, who was in midair. The malevolent aura surged and black fog filled the air, causing the wind and clouds to change. The pitch-black palm resembled a ghost claw that extended from hell with the power to forcibly pull all living beings into the abyss. Even the cultivators who had retreated far away felt chills when they caught sight of that palm, let alone Suzimo, who was standing in the epicenter of the battlefield. That was the power of a golden core to be able to suppress everything. Boom! At the same time, a loud sound came from above the cave abode. A gigantic golden palm descended from the skies, glowing with blinding golden radiance. The imprints on the palm could be seen clearly, and it possessed a holy aura that could not be encroached upon by evil. Its aura was so terrifying it seemed like it wanted to purge all demon. The spirit energy in Suzimo's dantian had already reached its limit, and his 6 spirit meridians rumbled as spirit energy gushed wildly. The reason why he chose to use the Fiend Suppression Seal was because it carried a holy aura that could purge evil and was a natural enemy against the malevolent aura. Even then, the Fiend Suppression Seal alone was not enough to fight against the spirit art released by a golden core. Boom! The two palms collided and produced a deafening sound. Lights of 2 different colors, gold and black, intertwined and collided. A terrifying halo of power spread out, causing the entire cave abode to shake on the verge of collapsing. Right in front of everyone, the golden palm paused for a moment before dissipating. As for the black palm shrouded with malevolent aura, it had clearly weakened. Many cultivators could not help but feel shocked when they saw that. If the both of them were at similar cultivation realms, the divine power within the golden palm would have been able to suppress the skinny old man's spirit art. Clang! Clang! After the two palms collided, a sharp sound of swords humming sounded. 18 supreme-grade flying swords hovered in front of Suzimo, shining brightly with spirit light. They intertwined in midair, leaving streaks of sword scars. They condensed into a sharp sword formation that emitted endless sword chi. It was the candlelight sword formation. Go! A huge sword-shaped disc was formed and charged towards the gigantic black palm, buzzing and trembling. The black palm opened up, as if it wanted to blot out the sky, and grabbed the candlelight sword formation directly. Poof! 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 Initially, the sword-shaped disc was still spinning continuously. However, it came to a stop after being grabbed by the black palm and let out a sorrowful sound. Boom! The sword formation dispersed and the 18 flying swords scattered everywhere. The malevolent aura surrounding the black palm faded even more. Although the candlelight sword formation had dissipated, its power was so terrifying that it riddled the black palm with holes. The Fiend Suppression Seal and candlelight sword formation consumed a huge amount of spirit energy, and they were also Suzimo's trump cards. Even after Suzimo's 2 trump cards, the remaining power of the sealer's spirit art was still terrifying enough to destroy everyone. Swoosh! The black palm descended and enveloped Suzimo before closing its grip tightly. Suzimo's figure was held in the center of the black palm and he was instantly engulfed by the spreading malevolent aura. It was over. Although it was blocked by the Fiend Suppression Seal and Candlelight Sword formation, this was still the power of a golden core after all. Even if Suzumo's physique could withstand the grip of the Black Palm, he would be killed the moment the malevolent aura of a golden core seeped into his body and corroded it. On the other side, a tear appeared in the void behind the skinny old man. It gave off a terrifying aura and dragged him inside immediately. The dimensional tear. The rules of the ancient battlefield could not be breached at the end of the day. The skinny old man did not have the chance to strike a second time. Before the dimensional tear closed, the skinny old man's body was already torn to pieces with blood spewing and spraying everywhere, leaving nothing behind. A moment later, the dimensional tear slowly closed. Many people had complicated expressions upon seeing this. If he wasn't targeted by a sealer, a cultivator like him would have been able to stand shoulder to shoulder with the young elites of the various major factions. He asked for it by being so arrogant and insolent. It's true that he's a rare genius to be able to obtain the Saber Emperor's inheritance. What a pity. There's nothing to be pitied. A fallen genius isn't a genius and will definitely be forgotten by others in the end. It was quite an honorable death for him to exchange his life with a sealer's. Some looked regretful, some gloated while others shook their heads and sighed. Chapter 425 Unsurpassed Genius. Chapter 425 Unsurpassed Genius. Pei Chunyu had a smile on his face and was already prepared to make a move. He was going to grab Suzumo's storage bag the moment the Black Palm dissipated. But right then, the rumbling sound of a tsunami surged out from the Black Palm that was in midair, roaring with a terrifying aura. Crack, crack, crack. A thin crack appeared on the surface of the Black Palm, growing bigger and clearer. Swoosh. Through the pitch-black malevolent aura, a blood-red light that flickered with lightning burst out from within. It was eye-catching and split the Black Palm into two as a figure leaped out. Pest! Everyone shuddered and their eyeballs constricted with disbelief when they caught sight of that figure. How is that possible? Pei Chunyu lost his composure and exclaimed. It wasn't anybody else, but Suzumo, whom everyone had thought to be dead. His green robes were completely corroded by the malevolent aura. He looked wretched, staggering in his footsteps. However, his eyes were bright and clear as ever and there was a fighting intent that was rising in his gaze. Exuding an arrogant aura, he possessed a dominance that looked down on everyone. He was still alive. Against the full strength of a sealer and the suppressive power of a golden core, Suzumo managed to survive. This meant that the sealer had died for nothing. Malevolent Earth Sect's faction in the ancient battlefield was almost completely destroyed. In reality, Suzumo had given it his all to be able to withstand that attack from the sealer. Apart from the Fiend Suppression Seal and Candlelight Sword formation, the moment he was engulfed by the Black Palm, Suzumo even circulated his bloodline and channeled his power to its peak, releasing countercurrent. Although that slash managed to split the Black Palm into two, allowing him to escape, he was still injured nevertheless. Furthermore, the golden core malevolent aura of the skinny old man had surged into his body wildly. Normally, the malevolent aura of a golden core was enough to destroy the heart and meridians of a Foundation establishment cultivator, killing him outright. Unfortunately, Suzumo's bloodline contained a violent power of thunder that was the nemesis of powers like the malevolent aura. Furthermore, although Suzumo had his reservations and did not dare to release his demonic chi so as to conceal his demonic cultivation, it was undeniable that his body possessed a vast amount of demonic chi. Although he could not release them, a strong backlash was triggered by the demonic chi upon the invasion of the malevolent aura. Additionally, Suzumo's body had received nourishment from the essence energy of the dragon race and his physique was currently unpredictably strong. Upon entering his body, the golden core malevolent aura was washed away by the powers of thunder and blood chi as well as the dragon race's essence energy. It dissipated before it could even unleash its true might. Poof! Suzumo spat out a mouthful of blood and his face turned paler. While he managed to survive, he did not feel good either. His body had just received a strong impact after all and he was suffering from internal injuries with his internal organs shaken. He would have been doomed if the two sealers had joined forces. It was a pity that the Glass Palace sealer did not see the need or reason to sacrifice himself and thus did not attack Suzimo. Gripping Blood Quencher tightly, Suzimo panted slightly. Pei Chunyu narrowed his eyes and awaited for an opportunity. There were still a few malevolent earth sect cultivators left in the cave abode. Shifting slowly, they moved to surround Suzimo with hateful eyes. Suzimo closed his eyes to regulate his breathing, as though he was unaware of everything around him. No one could tell that Suzimo's injuries were healing at a visible speed. Not only was Suzimo's physique powerful, his regeneration capabilities were even more terrifying. Suzimo, you don't even have the energy to attack anymore. Fufu, if I were you and I managed to survive against a sealer, I would have left this place right away. However, there's only a single reason why you're still here. You don't even have the strength to run away anymore. Pei Chunyu was wary and did not dare to strike directly, merely testing the waters with a faked composure and smile on his face. Suzimo was expressionless and did not even open his eyes, as if he had heard nothing at all. Seems like I was right. Pei Chunyu retracted his smile and shouted coldly, "Kill him." The moment he said that, the surrounding Glass Palace and remaining malevolent earth sect cultivators roared and attacked one after another. In a flash, the cave abode lit up. All of a sudden, 2 divine beams of light flickered in the void and was even more dazzling than the spirit lights on the various spirit weapons. Those were Suzimo's eyes. They were shiny and sharp as knives. Swash! Suzimo disappeared from where he was and a saber light flashed, swiping gently against a cultivator's neck, causing blood to spew out. A cultivator died on the spot. Immediately after, he slashed in reverse and struck the bracer of another Glass Palace cultivator. Snap! Even with the bracer, that person's arm could not be saved. Against the massive force, the person was sent flying and slammed heavily against the wall of the cave abode, sliding down slowly as his eyes dimmed. Barging left and right, Suzimo channeled his bloodline and deployed Sea Calming. No one could stop his rampage. Pei Chunyu. Bursting through all the obstacles, Suzimo arrived before Pei Chunyu and roared in laughter. The reason why I stayed here isn't because I have no strength left to run. It's because I'm here to take your life. Swoosh. Blood Quencher descended from above in a terrifying manner. Even though Suzimo could no longer deploy force given his current state, the power of his physique and bloodline was enough to destroy everything in his path. Clang. Blood Quencher collided against Pei Chunyu's fists. For that slash, Suzimo deployed Vortex of the Sea Calming 5 stances. Although it looked ordinary, there was the power of contortion spiraling within the saber technique. Ah! Pei Chunyu retreated continuously as he cried out in pain. A layer of sweat appeared on his forehead instantly. Even with the protection of his perfect-grade gloves, the power of the spiraling contortion was transmitted to Pei Chunyu's arms and his sleeves exploded. Poof! 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 Right in front of everyone, the muscles on Pei Chunyu's arms tore apart and burst into blood. That was only a tear of his muscles. If Suzimo was in his peak condition, that slash could have crushed the bones on both of Pei Chunyu's arms completely. Let's go. Right then, the golden-robed old man took a step forward and jerked Pei Chunyu back, shouting as he threw the latter towards the entrance of the cave abode. Even the sealer had the intention to retreat. That kid is too strong. He's truly an unsurpassed genius. With heavenly-defying fortune, he managed to obtain the Saber Emperor's inheritance and has already accumulated the force. No one is his match other than the most exceptional paragons of Tianhuang mainland. We'll leave this place as far as we can. Right after, we'll hide in a corner of the ancient battlefield and cultivate till the deadline is up before leaving. A genius like that is bound to incur the jealousy of the heavens, and he'll definitely be met with great calamities where he can die with ease. There's no need for you to fight him head-on. The golden-robed old man followed behind Pei Chunyu and instructed as they dashed towards the exit. He did not want to make use of his power as a golden core until the last moment. Furthermore, he would definitely be dead if he unleashed his power as a golden core. However, there was no guarantee that Suzimo would die. Trying to flee? Sneering, Suzimo picked up Blood Quencher and deployed Divine Steed Fleeting, chasing after the two of them. Chapter 426, Battling the Sealer. Chapter 426, Battling the Sealer. Pei Chunyu swallowed a handful of elixirs to suppress his body's injuries for the time being. By now, he was no longer smiling as he sped ahead with a panicked expression, not daring to rest at all. He was thoroughly shaken after that fight. At that moment, the only thoughts in Pei Chunyu's minds were of Shui Yang and the skinny old man's deaths, causing his limbs to go cold. This is a ruthless person who has no fear. You must not fall into his hand. Pei Chunyu grit his teeth and screamed internally. The crowd was astounded. If they hadn't witnessed it personally, nobody would have imagined a Foundation establishment cultivator chasing down the successor of Glass Palace and a sealer in the ancient battlefield. That man is truly audacious. The sealer merely doesn't want to trade lives right now. If he's really forced into a corner and retaliates, he can kill Su Zimo instantly. That's not for sure. The sealer of Malevolent Earth sect died for nothing previously. Many cultivators discussed as they started to fight for the Grade 2 elixirs of Elixir Pool sect before dashing out of the cave abode. All of them wanted to witness the outcome. In front of the Elixir Refinement Hall, Su Xiaoning's eyes were still closed as she received Elixir Pool sect's inheritance. The long duration of the inheritance implied that there were many things left behind by Elixir Pool sect. It was beneficial, be it for Su Xiaoning or Elixir Yang sect. Hundreds of Elixir Yang sect disciples protected Xiaoning in the middle like stars surrounding the moon, layer by layer. They were so tight that even wind could not blow in, as they were afraid that the inheritance process would be disrupted. Tang Yu started to furrow her brows as she looked towards the depths of the ruins from time to time with a worried expression. Smiling gently, Uncle Liang asked, "You're worried about young Master Su, right? I'm praying right now that there's no perfect meridian unlocking elixir in Elixir Pool sect." Sighing, Tang Yu continued, "Given his personality, since he said that he definitely has to get his hands on a perfect meridian unlocking elixir, he'll definitely fight for one. Against the successors of Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth sect, he doesn't stand a chance of winning." "Don't worry." Uncle Liang pondered and said, "Now that I think about it, the lad's saber technique should be the sea calming 5 stances. In other words, the rumor was real and he truly obtained the Saber Emperor's inheritance." Although Tang Yu had guessed it vaguely previously, she was still shocked when she heard Uncle Liang say it. The Saber Mountain Spirit Sea was formed from the ancient era and countless geniuses have been buried in it throughout history. Now, an unknown cultivator managed to get his hands on it. Furthermore, that person had not even heard of the Saber Mountain Spirit Sea's existence beforehand. Everything seemed ridiculously absurd, and yet, there was an indescribable mysteriousness to it, as if everything was predetermined. Uncle Liang continued, "Given the lad's current combat strength, he can definitely hold his ground against Pei Chunyu and Shui Yang. Even if he can't win them, he'll be able to escape unscathed. You don't have to worry." "Yes." Tang Yu nodded and her worries lessened. Suddenly, the sound of robes slicing the air could be heard, and it was extremely fast. The person's breathing was heavy, clearly exhausted. Everyone from Elixir Yang sect looked over, and when they saw the person's face, they were stunned and dumbfounded. Pei Chunyu of Glass Palace. He looked completely wretched and his arms were filled with blood, his flesh still torn and bleeding. With a pale expression, his eyes were now bloodshot, no longer clear as before. He glanced towards the side of Elixir Yang sect without stopping and continued dashing towards the fog valley outside. Before long, he disappeared from everyone's line of sight. Even Tang Yu, who was extremely intelligent, was stunned at the moment, unable to understand what had just happened, let alone everyone else. How could that be? Didn't Glass Palace head into the depths of the ruins in search of a perfect meridian unlocking elixir? Why was Pei Chunyu the only one left? What about his sealer? In other words, which faction managed to force Glass Palace to such a state? Uncle Liang's eyes flickered as he speculated. The appearance of a perfect meridian unlocking elixir must have caused Glass Palace and Malevolent Earth sect to get into a big fight, causing the situation to go out of control. The sealers must have fought one another with both dead. After losing to Shui Yang, Pei Chunyu has no other choice but to escape right now. The cultivators of Elixir Yang sect nodded silently. Tang Yu frowned. Although Uncle Liang's conjecture sounded logical, she felt that something was amiss. When Pei Chunyu was escaping, his expression was horrified, as though he had encountered something that frightened him. Did Shui Yang possess such strength? Or could something unimaginable have happened in the depths of the ruins? Right then, the sound of a clash echoed from the air in the distance. It was a loud boom and the battle had clearly reached its climax. Everyone from Elixir Yang sect looked over and their expressions froze with agape mouths. In the distance, two figures were engaged in an intense battle. Spirit light shone brightly and a blood beam filled the skies. Bang! 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 Each time the two of them clashed, an extremely terrifying energy fluctuation would ripple out, causing everyone to shudder. One of them was the golden-robed old man, Glass Palace's sealer. The other person was in green robes and wielded a blood-colored saber. It was none other than Su Zimo who had entered the depths of the ruins. This. Uncle Liang was completely dumbfounded. Tang Yu opened her mouth slightly and looked at the green-robed figure far away without blinking. All the confusion in her heart seemed to have been resolved. The person that Pei Chunyu feared was not Shui Yang, but Su Zimo. The situation on the battlefield was extremely tense. Although the sealer, the golden-robed old man, did not unleash his power as a golden core, all of his attacks were extremely forceful, carrying the might of an 8-meridian foundation establishment cultivator. On the other hand, Su Zimo was even more ferocious, slicing sharply with a fervent gaze. With the weight of Blood Quencher as well as Sea Calming, Su Zimo was not disadvantaged against the golden-robed old man. As time passed by, Su Zimo's blood surged and the sounds of tsunami were endless, evidently intensifying as the battle raged on. As for the golden-robed old man, he was no longer as nimble as before and the blood chi he produced gradually faded. This battle had exhausted him greatly. In just a few dozens of breaths' time, the golden-robed old man's skin had lost its luster, withering with wrinkles appearing. Tang Yu said in a deep voice, Glass Palace's sealer is already at the end of his life and his stamina is weak along with his blood chi. He'll definitely lose if he continues battling. He won't. Uncle Liang said with a grim expression, the person who should be worried right now should be Su Zimo. The power of a sealer lies in his killing move with the power of a golden core. If Su Zimo stops now, he might be able to survive. If he forces the sealer to the point of no return, he's bound to die. No one dared to interfere given the circumstances. Nobody could predict when the sealer would disregard his life and unleash his power as a golden core. Chapter 427, Baited Kill. Chapter 427, Baited Kill. Su Zimo was drenched in sweat and steam emitted from his body like smoke. The power of his bloodline was being channeled at his limit. The battle was getting more intense. This also meant that the outcome of this battle would be decided soon. Ever since they entered the Fog Valley, Su Zimo had been battling the entire time. Earlier on, he killed countless demon beasts and even took down a sealer without resting once. Coupled with the fact that he was injured, Su Zimo was already pushing his body to its limits to be able to fight the sealer till now. This was also because he had cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the Great Wilderness, Void Thunder Manual, and devoured the dragon egg's essence. An ordinary body would have been destroyed by now. In the eyes of the golden-robed old man, Su Zimo's stamina, physique and body had already surpassed a pure-blooded ferocious beast. Of course, although Su Zimo's body was at its limits, the golden-robed old man was in an even worse condition. Everyone could tell that he was getting significantly older with every breath in an irreversible manner. Each time the golden-robed old man attacked, he was using up the remainder of his lifespan. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and took a deep breath. Suddenly, a tremendous change occurred in his saber technique. Earlier on, it was tough and ferocious. In the blink of an eye, it was as gentle as the ripples on the surface of a water, spreading continuously. The ripple stance of Sea Calming Manual. Countercurrent represented toughness while ripple represented softness. Softness was different from weakness, where the latter referred to powerless. The softness of water could grind away the edge of stones. The softness of water could penetrate a rock. The softness of water could engulf everything. Softness countered hardness. When Su Zimo used Ripple, he did not fight the golden-robed old man head-on. Instead, everything was a tap-and-go. The saber changed angles swiftly and a series of ripples formed each time it struck. Every single attack looked weak and powerless, but they were fatal. The sudden change caught the golden-robed old man off guard. In a moment of carelessness, 2 wounds appeared on his arm and blood gushed out as he retreated continuously. That's all there is to sealers. Su Zimo smirked. Against Su Zimo's mockery, the golden-robed old man calmed down quickly and his eyes were cloudy and expressionless. Nobody could read his thoughts. He was looking for an opportunity. He wanted a perfect opportunity to unleash his power as a golden core and kill Su Zimo in exchange for his life. At the moment, the golden-robed old man was expressionless. However, his heart had a surge of sadness and he could only sigh internally. At the end of the day, he had reached this inevitable step. Part of the reason why he did not unleash his power as a golden core immediately was to hold back Su Zimo, allowing Pei Chunyu sufficient time to escape. At the same time, in the depths of his heart, he still feared death. He was different from the skinny old man from before. If the skinny old man were to return to the malevolent Earth sect alive with the fiend heir dead, he would receive extremely cruel punishment which was worse than death. That was why the skinny old man could unleash his power as a golden core so easily, as he did not have any psychological burdens. The moment the fiend heir was dead, he was already a dead man as well. However, for Glass Palace, Pei Chunyu was still alive. The golden-robed old man still harbored hope that he would be able to force Su Zimo back without unleashing his power as a golden core. However, it was a pity that his hope was about to be crushed mercilessly. Su Zimo's gaze was fervent. As though he could read the golden-robed old man's mind, he spoke again without stopping in his attacks. Actually, you had a chance to kill me. The golden-robed old man was unmoved and continued defending against Bloodquencher's Ripple expressionlessly. He knew that Su Zimo was attacking his mental state. In a fight, top experts would often provoke their opponents to reveal openings so as to seize the advantage. Smiling gently, Su Zimo continued, "Your only chance was to work together with the sealer of malevolent Earth sect. If 2 sealers were to unleash their powers as golden cores and fight me with all their might, I would have most likely died. It's just a pity." The golden-robed old man's eyes flickered and an imperceptible ripple appeared in his mind. Although he knew that Su Zimo was attacking him mentally so that he would reveal an opening, the golden-robed old man felt a strong sense of frustration and indignance. Those words struck a chord in his heart. A gleeful expression flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. "It's just a pity that you were too afraid of death. Even now, you harbor hope of surviving. But actually, you know in your heart that you'll definitely die today. You." The golden-robed old man's expression changed and was about to say something when his hand slowed down, revealing a major opening. Su Zimo's eyes lit up as he strode forward, slashing in reverse towards the golden-robed old man's throat with a chilling killing intent. All of a sudden, a terrifying aura burst forth from the golden-robed old man. "Su Zimo, you've been tricked." Ignoring the incoming saber, the golden-robed old man suddenly unleashed his power as a golden core, engulfing Su Zimo with a gigantic palm. "Even if I have to die, I'll take you with me." Not good. Uncle Liang's heart skipped a beat and he turned pale with fright when he saw that. Others might not read the situation clearly, but he understood it well given his experience. At first, Su Zimo saw that he could not take down the golden-robed old man and began attacking the latter mentally to break the stalemate. Initially, the golden-robed old man was unmoved. However, after a few sentences, the golden-robed old man was enraged and revealed an opening. There was naturally no way Su Zimo would let the opportunity go as he took advantage of the situation and charged forward. But in reality, that opening was revealed by the golden-robed old man intentionally. That was the reason why he said that Su Zimo was tricked. The golden-robed old man was waiting for Su Zimo to rush forward with no room to retreat before killing the latter by unleashing his power as a golden core. "Highs." Uncle Liang sighed and shook his head. He's still too inexperienced after all. Before he could finish his sigh, a soft laugh came from the battlefield. "Fufu, the one that was tricked, is you." It was Su Zimo's laughter. Although he was initially at the battlefield, by the time his sentence was completed, Su Zimo had already ran far away from where he was. Boom! The golden-robed old man's palm slammed onto the ground, creating a clear palm print. He missed. What happened stunned all the cultivators once more. Standing from afar, Su Zimo looked at the golden-robed old man with a mocking gaze and a fake smile. At that instant, the golden-robed old man aged considerably. A gigantic dimensional crack had already appeared behind him, devouring him mercilessly like a demon from hell, leaving him with no corp. After pondering for a while, Uncle Liang came to a realization. Initially, he thought that Su Zimo was tricked by the golden-robed old man's intentional opening. However, the truth was that Su Zimo had also read the golden-robed old man's intentions and pretended to charge forward before escaping far away after the latter unleashed his power as a golden core. It was a bloodless battle of psychological warfare. A single mistake and he would have lost everything and died on the spot. Both parties schemed and fought several times, but in the end, Su Zimo came out on top and baited the sealer to his death. Chapter 428 Escape. Chapter 428 Escape. Uncle Liang's expression was complicated. Although the golden-robed old man did not die in the hands of Su Zimo, he was still the reason why the former was devoured and killed by the dimensional tear. The fact that a sealer was not able to kill a Foundation establishment cultivator despite sacrificing his own life was rather sorrowful. In reality, Su Zimo had also taken an extremely huge risk in that battle. The moment the sealer unleashed his power as a golden core, Su Zimo was not a match for him at all. In the Grade 2 Elixir Cave abode, he only managed to defend against the skinny old man by using all his trump cards. Even then, he was severely injured. Given Su Zimo's current condition, there was absolutely no way he could have withstood another attack of a golden core level. That was the reason why he was fighting the golden-robed old man for so long. Eventually, he made use of his spirit perception and spotted the golden-robed old man's killing intent a moment earlier, allowing him to retreat and bait the latter to his death. Su Zimo was almost completely exhausted and he would not have been able to hold on if not for his extremely strong regeneration capabilities. After baiting the sealer to his death, Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief. After a slight pause, his eyes flashed with a cold glint. He came before the Elixir Refinement Hall and asked softly, "Has anyone seen Pei Chunyu?" He escaped into the valley. A cultivator pointed. If Pei Chunyu did not die, he would ultimately be an uncertain source of trouble for Su Zimo. Tang Yu was nervous and stepped forward quickly, persuading, "Fellow Daoist Su, you're so weak right now, don't take the risk. Furthermore, even if you give chase now, you might not be able to catch up with him." Su Zimo shook his head and in a flash, darted into the fog valley without explaining anything. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared before everyone. Xiaoning was still receiving her inheritance. The cultivators of Elixir Yang sect discussed the battle from earlier with soft voices and excited expressions. Although the sealer was at the end of his life and only had a single chance to strike, he was still a golden core no matter what. That was a battle between a Foundation establishment cultivator and a golden core. This kind of talk was enough for the Elixir Yang sect cultivators to brag about it for many years after returning to the sect. Not long after, the Thousand Crane sect cultivators returned from the depths of the ruins and their eyes brimmed with joy. "Congratulations, Sister Man. Tang Yu said with a smile, "Seems like Thousand Crane sect benefited quite a bit from Elixir Pool sect as well." "Yes, we obtained a couple of lost talisman secret techniques." Feng Man pursed her lips and smiled. Right then, the discussions of cultivators not far away could be heard. "What's the background of Su Zimo? His way too ruthless." "That's right. I saw with my very own eyes how he squashed the fiend heir of Malevolent Earth sect to death like an ant." "What use is the fiend heir? Even the sealer of Malevolent Earth sect died for nothing." The Elixir Yang sect cultivators were stunned when they heard that. Frowning, Tang Yu turned to Feng Man and asked, "What's up with Malevolent Earth sect? What has it got to do with fellow Daoist Su? You don't know about it yet?" Feng Man looked at her oddly. Tang Yu and the others had remained around Xiaoning the entire time and did not know about everything that happened in the Grade 2 Elixir Cave abode. Feng Manman explained, a perfect meridian unlocking elixir appeared in a cave abode in the depths of the ruins and Su Zimo stole it while killing Shuiyong on the spot. Ah! A wave of shock and astonishment could be heard from the crowd. Feng Manman continued, thereafter, Malevolent Earth Sect Sealer attacked and he took on everything. Malevolent Earth Sect is now completely destroyed. This time round, it was completely silent in front of the Elixir Refinement Hall. In that case, it meant that 2 sealers had died for nothing. Tang Yu had a stunned expression and her mouth was agape for the longest time. In the Fog Valley, Su Zimo deployed his spirit wings and sped forward at lightning speed. Charging towards the entrance of the valley, he was already at the limits of his speed. He did not fight the golden-robed old man for long. Pei Chunyu was already injured and did not have much strength left. It was unrealistic for him to escape the Fog Valley in this period of time. After all, there were still countless beasts and birds roaming in the valley. Throughout the way, Su Zimo made use of his strong hearing, eyesight, and senses to track down traces of Pei Chunyu. Right now, the night was extremely dark and the fog was everywhere. It would be almost impossible for the other cultivators to search for someone since their vision range would be 30 feet at most. However, it was different for Su Zimo. After clearing his 7 orifices, his 5 senses were extremely sharp and he had a large search radius. He could notice any bit of activity. The pure-blooded ferocious beasts in the valley were already dead and Su Zimo advanced fearlessly. None of the demon beasts and ancient remnant beasts in the fog dared to approach him and they all hid far away. Before long, Su Zimo rushed out of the Fog Valley and stood at the entrance, frowning. He did not see Pei Chunyu at all. That guy had vanished. Su Zimo's eyes flickered and he frowned in deep thought. In this case, there could only be 2 possibilities. First, Pei Chunyu had already escaped the valley. However, Su Zimo deduced that the probability of that wasn't great. Second, Pei Chunyu was still in the valley. It wasn't a simple task if one wanted to hide inside the Fog Valley. Birds filled the skies and beasts roamed the ground. There was no way a cultivator would be able to hide in peace as they would definitely encounter battles and create a commotion. However, along the way, Su Zimo did not notice any signs nor did he hear any activity. Weird. He murmured softly. Could he truly have escaped? On second thought, Su Zimo felt that it wouldn't be surprising for a disciple of Glass Palace, an immortal sect, to possess some life preservation methods. At that moment, Pei Chunyu might have already escaped 1,000 miles away from that place. After loitering around for a long time, Su Zimo returned from where he came from and disappeared into the fog. A long time later, the valley regained its tranquility. In the blink of an eye, the night had passed. The sun rose, casting away the night from the valley. An ancient remnant beast, the cloud-seeking leopard, walked slowly out of its cave, looking dispirited and terrible. It had devoured a human the previous night. However, for some reason, it did not manage to digest the human even after the night and it felt bloated and uncomfortable. The cloud-seeking leopard did not walk far when it cried out and collapsed weakly to the ground with a throbbing pain in its stomach. Sheeing. Flashes of blood appeared. The abdomen of the cloud-seeking leopard was ripped open from the inside as countless organs spilled out of a gigantic hole along with a blooded figure. The blooded figure bent over and started retching. A while later, he reached out and wiped away the blood on his face, revealing a disfigured face that was horrifying like a ghost. Su Zimo, I will definitely make you pay 100 times for the humiliation I suffered today. The blooded figure's gaze was venomous as he said with grit teeth. The previous night, Pei Chunyu predicted that it would be hard for him to escape from Su Zimo. Thus, he took the initiative to look for an ancient remnant beast and allowed it to devour him. That was an extremely dangerous move. The stomachs of demon beasts churned extremely strongly and ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to handle it. Anyone else would have been crushed into sludge. Furthermore, the digestive fluids of an ancient remnant beast was extremely corrosive and could even melt rocks and ores. If not for the fact that the Glass Heart Sutra tempered his body so powerfully, Pei Chunyu wouldn't have survived the night. Even so, his flesh was corroded into a bloody mess and he was completely disfigured, almost shedding an entire layer of skin. Turning to glare at the cloud-seeking leopard and its dying eyes, Pei Chunyu staggered towards the entrance of the valley and escaped with a cold expression. Chapter 429, A Heavenly Shocking Appearance Through Stone, Arrival of the Human Emperor's Palace. Chapter 429, A Heavenly Shocking Appearance Through Stone, Arrival of the Human Emperor's Palace. With the end of the Battle of the Ruins, the biggest winner was Elixir Yang sect. Entering the ancient battlefield with more than 1,000 disciples, they had more than 400 remaining. If nothing went wrong, these 400-odd people would be able to return to Elixir Yang sect safely. Xiaoning received the inheritance successfully and opened up the Elixir Refinement Hall, obtaining countless ancient elixir manuals. Elixir Yang sect's reputation and status was bound to soar after the ancient elixir manuals were brought back to the sect. The next day, Elixir Yang sect, Thousand Crane sect, Puppet sect, Tomb sect and the other sects and factions left the place and returned to Shentian City. Most of the cultivators had already achieved their goals for the ancient battlefield expedition. In the following period of time, they would choose to cultivate peacefully in Shentian City before leaving once the year was up. Su Zimo began to cultivate in seclusion as well, preparing to unlock his 7th spirit meridian. Time passed by slowly and in the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had been in the ancient battlefield for half a year. He had just unlocked his 7th spirit meridian a couple of days ago, increasing his strength once more. As long as he continued cultivating, Su Zimo might be able to reach the peak of 7 Meridian Foundation establishment before leaving the ancient battlefield. After returning to the Great Zhou dynasty and consuming the perfect meridian unlocking elixir, he would have a chance of unlocking his 8th spirit meridian, turning into a foundation establishment cultivator with all meridians unlocked. By unlocking all 8 meridians, he would be at perfected foundation establishment cultivation realm and would definitely form a golden core. Furthermore, he would definitely have a golden core phenomenon accompanying his core formation. Of course, that was under the premise that everything went smoothly. The path of cultivation was unpredictable and no one could guarantee that it would be smooth without any changes happening in this period of time. This day, the skies suddenly flashed with lightning and rumbled with thunder. A terrifying pressure instantly descended upon the ancient battlefield. Everything went silent. Time seemed to have frozen. All the living beings in the ancient battlefield, be it ancient remnant beasts or pure-blooded ferocious beasts, sprawled onto the ground obediently and their eyes revealed endless fear. This was a fear that stemmed from the ancient era, something deep-rooted and indestructible. In every corner of the ancient battlefield, the successors of the various super-sects of Tianhuang mainland came forward and looked up in the air in shock. Countless cultivators woke up from their seclusion cultivation and came out one after another. It didn't matter if it was Elixir Yang sect, Thousand Crane sect, Puppet sect or Tomb sect that was in Shentian City. At this moment, every single cultivator sensed something and arrived on the long street, roofs and midair, gazing into the distance. The cultivators were dumbfounded in shock. Even Uncle Liang, who was a sealer, opened his mouth with a look of disbelief. The clouds were shifting rapidly in the center of the sky. Dark clouds covered the place and they churned, rotating slowly to form a gigantic black vortex that was extremely shocking. In that sea of clouds, numerous lightning snakes were packed densely together, forming a dazzling sea of lightning within the sea of clouds. The closer it was to the core of the vortex, the more concentrated the lightning became. Thunder rumbled and lightning crackled. It was as though a giant creature was about to descend from the vortex. This is. Standing in midair, Su Zimo gazed at the horizon with a bright light in his eyes. The aura that was emanated from the center of the cloud vortex was way too terrifying. Against its suppression, Su Zimo felt extremely insignificant and almost wanted to kneel down in worship. Some of the cultivators couldn't handle it and were already kneeling on the ground in fright. Gradually, a huge square-shaped stone slab appeared in the middle of the vortex, covering the entire place. As it descended, it seemed as if it could crush everything in the ancient battlefield into emptiness. This was only the tip of the iceberg for this unknown terrifying existence. The stone slab continued descending and gradually revealed its full appearance. It was an extremely old palace with a round top and a square base. Possessing an ancient and boundless aura, it seemed like it had arrived against the flow of time from the ancient era. A circular top and a square base, the human emperor's palace. Uncle Liang gasped and exclaimed. At the same time, the successors of the various supersects in the ancient battlefield recognized the origin of this ancient palace one after another. The human emperor's palace. Those words seemed to possess a special power, causing Su Zimo's blood to boil in secret. Su Zimo had not heard of the human emperor's palace before. However, judging from the looks of everyone else, he knew that the origin of this palace definitely surpassed the Saber Mountain Spirit Sea. Countless cultivators knelt on the ground and gazed at that ancient palace beneath the skies with endless awe and passion. The human emperor's palace stood tall in the sky, floating in the sea of lightning like a supreme god, peering down at the world with immense might. A heavenly shocking appearance through stone, arrival of the human emperor's palace. Taking a deep breath of air, Uncle Liang muttered to himself, the appearance of the human emperor's palace means that chaos is about to arise in Tianhuang mainland, bringing forth a new golden age. Seems like a supreme emperor will definitely be born in this era. Perhaps we're about to welcome a prosperous era with multiple emperors arising, restoring the glory of the ancient era. To be fortunate enough to witness everything in my lifetime, I can now die without any regrets. South of the ancient battlefield. A buzz-cut cultivator stood with his upper body bare. Every single inch of his muscles shone with a bronze luster, giving off the feeling of explosive might. Breaking out of seclusion, a gigantic spear rested on this person's shoulder and he gave off an extremely savage aura. Raising his head to look at the ancient palace, he roared in laughter. Ha ha ha. The arrival of the human emperor's palace. Seems like I, Pang Yu, am fated to be an emperor in this era. Before his laughter ended, Pang Yu strode towards the center of the ancient battlefield in huge strides. North. A pair of resentful eyes could vaguely be seen through layers of vines that concealed the entrance of a hidden cave abode. Su Zimo, if not for you, I, Pei Chunyu, would definitely have a chance to obtain the human emperor's palace's inheritance. Half a year had passed and Pei Chunyu had yet to break through to 8 Meridian Foundation establishment. He did not have the strength to fight the others for the human emperor's palace's inheritance at all. In order to survive, he could only continue to hide here. West. A monk who was originally sitting quietly in the middle of the desert suddenly stood up. Gazing at the ancient palace above him, he mumbled to himself, the human emperor's palace does tempt me. East. A purple cloud soared into the sky before transforming into a figure and descending slowly. The purple-robed cultivator had a stern expression and did not smile at all. Possessing a dignified expression, he was surrounded by endless purple chi and had an extraordinary aura. After pondering for a moment, the purple-robed cultivator moved and disappeared from the spot. The center of the ancient battlefield. In front of a waterfall, a cultivator sat quietly on a rock. Although he was drenched from the splashing water, he was indifferent to it. A sheathed long sword laid horizontally across his knees and his long, narrow eyes revealed a sharp glint in them. Foo foo foo. With slender fingers as translucent as jade, he gripped the hilt of his sword slowly. Buzz. A sword light flashed for a moment. The sword had already returned to its sheath, as if it had never appeared. The waterfall that was originally pouring down suddenly paused with a blank gap in the middle, as if someone had cut it in half. The human emperor's inheritance is meant for no one else but me. Rising, the tall cultivator mounted the sword on his waist casually and murmured, "This is a rare opportunity for my startling sword to test the methods of all the other successors of the various sect." Almost at the same time, the successors of all the various major sects rose one another, heading towards the center of the ancient battlefield. Chapter 430, Primordial Secret. Chapter 430, Primordial Secret. Xiantian City. Su Zimo arrived beside Tang Yu and asked softly, "What's the background of the human emperor's palace?" Gazing at Uncle Liang, Tang Yu said, "It's better to let Uncle Liang explain. He knows more about these ancient secrets than me." It's just a pity that I'm reaching the end of my life and I won't be able to witness the arrival of this glorious era. Sigh. Uncle Liang sighed gently with a wistful expression, revealing endless indignance in his eyes. After a momentary pause, he said slowly, "There's a person who has to be mentioned in order to explain the human emperor's palace. He's none other than the human emperor." The moment those words were said, it seemed to possess a divine might that caused the entire ancient battlefield to tremble. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. It was easy to deduce that this person was an emperor just by the title alone. However, even when Tang Yu mentioned the saber and sword emperors previously, she did not reveal an expression as such. It was an innate reverence and respect. This was no longer a mere title, but an eternal energy that ran through the ages. As though he could understand Su Zimo's confusion, Uncle Liang explained, "Throughout history, there would always be an emperor for every era. The Saber Emperor that left behind the Saber Mountain Spirit Sea was merely the Saber Emperor of that era. Later on, there was someone else who succeeded the Emperor of the Saber Emperor. In other words, be it the Saber, Sword, Immortal or Demon Emperors, they were not the only ones, and every single era would have paragons attaining the title of Emperor." At that moment, Uncle Liang paused for a moment before saying deeply, "However, throughout history, there has only been a single human emperor. For the other emperors, those were merely titles. However, he was the one and only human emperor." Human emperor. Su Zimo was shocked. At that point, he gradually understood the significance of those two words, human emperor. Even the immortal, Buddha, and fiend emperors could not take on the human emperor's title. Immortals, Buddhas, and fiends were merely different Taos of the human race. However, the human emperor was the emperor of all humans and was above the immortal, Buddha, and fiend emperors. What sort of a peerless genius was befitting of such a title? Uncle Liang reminisced and said slowly, "Throughout history, the human emperor was the strongest and most powerful emperor with no equal. In the face of the human emperor, all the other emperors could only be considered as subject. The human emperor experienced no failures throughout his life and reigned across history, arriving at the peak. Sweeping through the 9 heavens and 10 earths, nobody dared to challenge his glory as he looked down on the world and is revered till now." Su Zimo could barely contain his emotions. A life without failure, that was a true emperor, someone who single-handedly reigned across history. There was no human emperor before him and no one dared to claim themselves as one after him. Letting out a breath of air gently, Uncle Liang continued, "Of course, the reason why the human emperor received his title was not only due to his combat strength, but mostly because of his peerless achievements. It's no exaggeration to say that it's the human emperor's credit that the human race is able to occupy more than half of Tianhuang mainland right now. Do you know why the human race is able to enjoy its glory today despite the fact that we humans are born weak and fragile?" Suddenly, Uncle Liang paused and changed the topic, asking, "I don't." Su Zimo shook his head. In reality, he had pondered over this question before as well. Humans were born weak in constitution and had short lifespans without any claws or fangs. Even an adult human is unable to fight a ferocious tiger single-handedly. It was then needless to even compare about the dragon race and whatnot of the legends. Su Zimo let out a curious expression. He could vaguely sense that a shocking ancient secret was about to be revealed to him. Uncle Liang said, "It was said that back in the primordial era, there were thousands of different races. Among them, the 9 fiercest races reigned supreme and later generations referred to them as the primordial 9 races." Suddenly, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he recalled something. Back in the primordial ruins back in the Great Zhou dynasty, he heard the Blood Crow Palace's lord plead to the divine dragon when he was hiding in the cave with Lin Xuanji, "We're both from the 9 races." If the dragon race was one of the primordial 9 races, it meant that the Blood Crow Palace's lord had the same background. That would also explain why even the Emperor of Great Zhou was wary towards him. Uncle Liang continued, "In the primordial era, the humans were extremely weak and were enslaved by the thousands of races without any shred of dignity. Bullied by everyone else, it was a life worse than death. That was a tragic era of the human race that is unbearable to think of." There was a hint of sadness in Uncle Liang's tone. An image seemed to appear in Su Zimo's mind. There were countless humans living a wretched life under the whips of the thousands of races. In the vast lands, human corpses could be seen everywhere, trampled wantonly by the other races. Humans were enslaved and reared by the thousands of races and were the most popular type of food for them. From time to time, they would devour our flesh and drink our blood for enjoyment. That situation continued for a long time until the end of the primordial era, where a change happened for the humans. For some unknown reason, a massive war broke out between the thousands of races and corpses, and blood filled the entire world. It was an apocalyptic battle that lasted for many years. Tragic and terrible, blood filled the air and countless races were exterminated. After the war of the thousands of races ended, there were only 100 races left and the primordial era ended. All the cultivators were immersed in the primordial secret that Uncle Liang was recounting. No one noticed that Night Spirit, who was initially sleeping beside Xiaoning, had opened its eyes out of nowhere. A cold killing intent flickered in those black eyes from time to time. In fact, there was even a hint of confusion, as if it was trying hard to recall something. The ancient era came after the primordial era. Uncle Liang heaved a sigh of relief before continuing. Because of the war, the thousands of races could barely fend for themselves, and the human race finally got a respite, seizing the opportunity for an uprising. Born weak, humans relied on comprehending the heaven and earth to create many secret skills to modify their bodies. Since we had no fangs and claws, we created weapons and talismans, using swords and spears in place of claws and fangs. Humans established civilization and multiple emperors rose. In order to break free from our fates of being slaves, under the lead of multiple emperors, humans started resisting. We fought against the 100 races that were led by the primordial 9 races for our future, and finally, a glorious era that belonged to the humans arrived. At that point, many cultivators were streaming with warm tears, as if they had traveled back in time to the ancient era and were living in it, witnessing the rise of the human race. Gripping his fists tightly, Su Zimo was emotional as well as his hands trembled slightly. Uncle Liang sighed gently and said, "A historic war was invoked between the human race and the 100 races, lasting for a long time, and countless experts and mighty figures of the ancient era fell. The emperors were soaked in blood and it was extremely tragic. That was the ancient war which all of you have heard of." Su Zimo nodded. Back when Tang Yu was recounting the legend of the Saber Emperor, she mentioned the ancient war. It was just that Su Zimo did not know the reason for the ancient war because Tang Yu's explanation was rather vague. It was only until now that Su Zimo finally understood. The ancient war was the war that broke humans free from their fates. It was also a war that determined the destiny of the human race. It was a war that the humans couldn't afford to lose. If they lost, humans would be met with a fate worse than it was in the primordial era, and they would definitely not have further chances of rising. Chapter 431 – Eternal Human Emperor. Chapter 431 – Eternal Human Emperor. Uncle Liang said, "The ancient war lasted for a whole time and almost spanned across the entire ancient era. Among that, countless human cultivators risked their lives to save the commoners from the disaster, creating a tragic song among the glorious era of the human race. The primordial 9 races were way too strong and had already reigned over Tianhuang mainland ever since the primordial era, where there were thousands of races. Under the lead of the primordial 9 races, the 100 races joined forces and pushed the humans back. Slowly, the territories occupied by the humans decreased, and they were about to be engulfed by the 100 races that were led by the primordial 9 races at any moment. The human race was on the brink of extinction. Although everyone already knew that the outcome of the ancient war was that the human race stood victorious, everyone could not help but get nervous at that point. Uncle Liang took a deep breath of air and said deeply, "In that chaos, the human emperor appeared domineeringly and overturned the situation. He conquered the 4 regions and 3 seas almost single-handedly, killing multiple emperors among the 100 races and severing the light of providence on the primordial 9 races. Sweeping across Tianhuang mainland, everyone had to bow down everywhere he passed. The Dragon Emperor of the Dragon race and the Celestial Emperor of the Celestial race? Against the human emperor, all of them had to die. Later on, Descendants even referred to the birth of the human emperor as the subduing of all 100 races as his subject. The cultivators opened their mouths in shock, and it took a long time for them to calm their hearts. The result of the ancient war was that the 100 races lost massively and were almost extinct. Even the primordial 9 races were severely injured and had to each hide in a corner of Tianhuang mainland, living ignoble existences and rarely showing their faces. The 9 areas are known today as the 9 Forbidden Grounds. Su Zimo shuddered when he heard that. Previously, he heard Demonis G mention the 9 Forbidden Grounds where any living being that entered was bound to die. It was only until now that the doubts in Su Zimo's hearts were resolved. The origins of the 9 Forbidden Grounds came from the primordial 9 races that once ruled over Tianhuang mainland. What Uncle Liang meant was that if the human emperor hadn't appeared in the ancient era, the humans wouldn't have been a match for the primordial 9 races. Although the human emperor was already long gone, the primordial 9 races survived. Suddenly, a thought struck Su Zimo. If the primordial 9 races were to show themselves again and come out from the 9 Forbidden Grounds one after another in this era, who could stop them now that the human race no longer had the human emperor? It wasn't a completely unfounded worry. The reason why Su Zimo thought about that was because of the appearance of the Blood Crow Palace's lord. Shaking his head, Su Zimo stopped letting his imagination run wild. He merely heard Uncle Liang continuing, "From then on, the human race has prospered and the ancient era came to an end, bringing us to the current era. Right now, no one knows of the human emperor's name. However, because he reigned through history and conquered all regions, the human race refer to him as the emperor, and we descendants call him the eternal human emperor. Furthermore, it's because of the human emperor's appearance that the 100 races are destroyed and the primordial 9 races have to live an ignoble existence, bringing a close to an era. The ancient era was also known as the human emperor's era. Eternal human emperor," Uncle Liang continued, "ever since the ancient era, time has passed and the world has changed. Generation after generation, emperors have appeared on Tianhuang mainland, but none of them dare refer to themselves as the human emperor, and neither did any of them have the qualifications to attach eternal to their title." Su Zimo finally heaved out a sigh of relief when he heard that as a phrase filled his mind. The title of the human emperor was totally deserved. Tang Yu said, "The human emperor's palace was the bedroom of the human emperor and contains his inheritance. Ever since the human emperor left Tianhuang mainland, the human emperor's palace has only appeared 7 times, and there were a total of 7 people who had entered it, leaving their marks. Each of the cultivators that came forth from it underwent complete transformations. Among those 7 people, 3 of them became emperors. The other 4 cultivators became the strongest paragons of their respective generations. It was just a pity that they died midway and could not make it to the end. No one could ensure that the path of cultivation would be smooth. Even the cultivators with the most heavenly defying potentials would meet with countless calamities, and no one could guarantee that they could make it through everything safely. Tang Yu remarked, "From the point of view of the later generations, if the remaining 4 of the 7 cultivators who entered the human emperor's palace hadn't died, they would have definitely become emperors with their achievements as well." "What's inside the human emperor's palace?" Su Zimo could not help but ask. Tang Yu chuckled bitterly and shook her head. "I'm afraid other than the 7 cultivators who entered the human emperor's palace, no one else knows." Uncle Liang said deeply, "It's said that each of the 7 cultivators received different inheritances. For example, the 3 of them who became emperors were the Immortal, Buddha, and Fiend emperors respectively." Tang Yu looked at Su Zimo and suddenly asked, "Fellow Daoist Su, you're interested in the human emperor's palace's inheritance?" Su Zimo remained silent and did not reply. Tang Yu continued, "Only a single person is allowed into the human emperor's palace. If you wish to obtain its inheritance, you will naturally meet with the strongest cultivators in the ancient battlefield. Furthermore, all of them are bound to be at 8 Meridian Foundation establishment. Right now, you're only..." She did not continue. In her opinion, Su Zimo was indeed truly strong and could in fact challenge 8 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. However, it was unrealistic to think that he could suppress multiple geniuses and enter the human emperor's palace. After all, He was only at 7 Meridian Foundation establishment no matter what. The difference between 7 and 8 Foundation establishment was way too great. Furthermore, there were sealers of supersects watching from the sidelines. Not all sealers could be baited to their deaths by Suzimo. He might be able to survive against the attacks of a sealer. But, what if there were 2, or 3? Is Elixir Yang sect intending to go? Suddenly, Suzimo asked. We're not. Tang Yu shook her head decisively. I can almost predict that the area beneath the human Empress Palace will be filled with blood and corpses. There might even be many innocent sects that might get implicated just because they want to watch the show. We're in possession of many ancient manuals from Elixir Pool sect and we can't afford to lose them. I'll not let Elixir Yang sect take the risk. Nodding, Suzimo replied, this is an extremely rare occasion. I'll head over to take a look but I won't participate. At that moment, Suzimo told a lie. Tang Yu more or less understood Suzimo's personality and knew that he wouldn't change his mind easily after deciding on something. She no longer tried persuading him but merely reminded, make sure to stay away the moment you sense something amiss. Don't get implicated. Thank you. Suzimo greeted with cupped fists. Actually, there's something else about the human Empress Palace that draws in Foundation establishment cultivators. Suddenly, Uncle Liang spoke. It said that after the 8th Spirit Meridian, one can actually unlock a 9th Spirit Meridian. 9 represents extremity and as such, the 9 Meridian Foundation Establishment Cultivation Realm is also referred to as the Extreme Foundation Establishment Cultivation Realm. The mention of that had Suzimo's heart skipping a beat. He had a hunch about that. When he was unlocking the 7th Spirit Meridian, he felt that it was not as difficult as what everyone had described. Suzimo deduced that it might be because of his spirit energy's purity. Up till this point of his cultivation, he had not consumed any elixirs with impurities. Legend has it that only the human emperor has managed to unlock that ethereal 9th Spirit Meridian. Uncle Liang continued, of course, that's only a legend. After all, throughout history, apart from the human emperor, no one has managed to unlock the 9th Spirit Meridian. Even the 7 cultivators who stepped foot into the human Empress Palace did not manage to do it as well. That's also why some people want to enter the human Empress Palace to seek out the secret of the Extreme Foundation establishment. Chapter 432 Effortless Victory. Chapter 432 Effortless Victory. The second day after the human Empress Palace descended, Suzimo left Shentian City. He did not take Night Spirit with him. Instead, he chose to let it stay by Xiaoning's side to ensure her safety. Although Xiaoning had already obtained Elixir Pool Sect's inheritance and was bound to be valued by Elixir Yang Sect, Suzimo was still worried. He would only feel more relieved after knowing that Night Spirit was with her. Ever since they returned from Elixir Pool Sect, Xiaoning had been unusually happy. That was because in the inheritance memories of Elixir Pool Sect, she found an elixir that could increase one's lifespan, longevity elixir. However, it was a grade 3 elixir. Xiaoning could not create it at all given her current level of elixir refinement. Before leaving, she smiled and said to Suzimo, "Don't worry, I'll definitely refine a longevity elixir as soon as I can to help Big Brother extend his lifespan." The only reason why Xiaoning became an elixir refinement master was so that she could help her eldest brother extend his lifespan. Recalling Xiaoning's smile, Suzimo was in a great mood and could not help but grin as well. He did not choose to travel with anyone else. That was because from the moment he decided to fight for the human Empress Palace's inheritance, he had already made up his mind to change his appearance and hide everything about his background. With the descent of the human Empress Palace, Suzimo would have to face almost all the supersects of Tianhuang mainland. If a massive battle were to break out, it would be difficult to resolve the situation. Furthermore, there was a burning desire within Suzimo. He wanted to fight to his heart's content without having to conceal his demonic cultivation, to have a hearty battle with many paragons without having to hide anything. Since there was a chance that he had to take on his demon form, Suzimo had to change his appearance. Even if all the supersects wanted to take revenge later on, they would not be able to seek him out. To ensure that nothing went wrong, Suzimo would not use any means that would expose his identity. Speeding along the way, a series of crackling sounds came from within his body as his tendons and bones rang while his muscles expanded and his body turned taller. Even his facial features were changing. In the blink of an eye, the original Suzimo disappeared entirely. In his place was a 2-meter-tall burly man. With rough facial features, thick eyebrows, large eyes, and a wide nose and mouth, there was nothing delicate about his appearance anymore. Suzimo whipped out a spirit energy mirror and looked at his reflection, grinning in satisfaction. His green robes were no longer matching with his burly appearance. Rumbling through his storage bag, Suzimo dug out a linen shirt and draped it casually over his body, exposing his chest. He looked carefree and unreserved. A nascent soul could deploy his spirit consciousness and check on Suzimo. Other than that, no one could find any loopholes on Suzimo's appearance with their naked eyes. This was the ancient battlefield and there were only sealers at Golden Core Realm at most. In other words, the probability of Suzimo being exposed was almost zero. Under the heavens, the human Empress Palace was still descending slowly, exuding boundless might. The closer it was to the human Empress Palace, the more evident the feeling became. Those that wanted to contend for the human Empress Palace's inheritance would have to enter the area enveloped by it. This was also where the final fight would take place. Suzimo sprinted day and night without resting. 3 days later, his ears buzzed and caught wind of the sounds of fighting coming from the southwest. There were some angry shouts mixed with the sounds. Fights were extremely common in the ancient battlefield. People could get into fights even if they met by chance, let alone if they had disagreements. Because it was way too common, Suzimo did not intend to bother about it at all. However, he did not advance far when his expression changed. Raising his brow, he came to a stop and listened intently with raised ears. He seemed to hear a familiar voice in that fight. After some hesitation, Suzimo changed his direction and dashed towards the southwest. Poof! A large head was chopped off with blood flowing like a fountain. Filled with spirit energy, a 7 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator was using a long saber and fighting against 4 other cultivators in an intense fight. Several corpses laid on the ground with warm blood still flowing. It was clear that they hadn't died long ago. On the side of the battlefield, a beautiful young girl stood. She wore a pink dress and had a veil over her face, clapping as she smiled brightly. "You're amazing, fellow Daoist. Another bad guy is dead. Miss, don't worry. I, Ding Hongxian, will definitely protect you." The 7 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivator who was fighting against 4 people turned and said to the girl in pink, "Ding Hongxian, have you gone crazy?" Opposite him, a man shouted, "The person behind you is a demoness. Don't be bewitched by her and lose yourself. Senior brother Ding, why are we fighting among ourselves? It's not too late if we capture this peerless beauty first before enjoying her later." Another cultivator defended against Ding Hongxuan's saber and remarked while panting, "There's no need to say more. He's already bewitched by the demoness and has lost his mind completely. Don't hesitate and just kill him," an older cultivator among the 4 said in a deep voice. Upon hearing that, the 4 of them were extremely decisive and used their killing moves one after another, killing Ding Hongxian on the spot. The older cultivator turned around and walked towards the girl in pink without concealing the lust in his eyes. "Demoness, don't worry. I'll definitely take good care of you once you're in my hands. Hee hee." The girl in pink did not retreat and stood there pitifully. Sweeping her gentle gaze across the 4 of them, she said tearfully, "But, there's only 1 of me and there's 4 of you guys. Is that so?" The older cultivator's gaze turned cold as he remarked icily, "I'll kill them then." Just as he was about to turn around, a long sword protruded from his chest and fresh blood dripped. In an instant, blood faded from the older cultivator's face and his eyes regained their clarity. However, it was all too late. "Senior brother Liu, you want to enjoy her all for yourself." Behind the older cultivator stood a young cultivator with his sword extended. His eyes were maniac as he shouted with a frenzied expression, "That woman's mine. Don't fight with me for her. Crazy. All of you have gone crazy," another cultivator declared coldly with widened eyes. How dare you forget about our relationship as sect mates just for a woman? Since that's the case, I'll punish you on behalf of the sect. Clang, 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 poof, poof. The remaining 3 cultivators fought amongst one another, completely losing themselves. Before long, 2 of them were lying in a pool of blood. They only regained stupor right before dying, but it was all too late. The last person remaining was distraught and committed suicide. In the blink of an eye, the remaining 4 cultivators were all dead. As for the girl in pink, she did not move at all and was watching coldly from the sidelines right from the beginning with a faint hint of mockery in her eyes. That was a true effortless victory. Amitabha. Not far away, a Buddhist proclamation sounded. Female patron, you have a vicious heart and will descend into the 18 levels of hell sooner or later to receive your karma. If you're willing to repent and turn to Buddha, there might still be a sliver of hope for you. Chapter 433, Hanging on a Thread. Chapter 433, Hanging on a Thread. When she heard that voice, the girl in pink frowned and turned towards it. Not far away, a huge demon beast a few dozen feet tall strode over slowly. It had a tiger's body, a human face, sharp claws and fangs as well as 9 tails. Possessing a violent gaze, it exuded a feral aura. The girl in pink's expression changed slightly beneath her veil as she pursed her cherry lips and remarked, Lu Wu. The Lu Wu was a pure-blooded ferocious beast that resembled a tiger in shape. With a violent nature and immense strength, it was extremely powerful. Corpses soaked in blood dangled on the Lu Wu's 9 tails in a terrifying manner as the stench of blood filled the place. Although some of them had died a long time ago and were dried up, they still exuded a pungent smell. Those that were not dried up flowed with fresh blood that dripped on the ground. There were around 1,000 corpses on the 9 tails. It was clear that they were from different factions judging from their varied attire. The Lu Wu swayed its 9 tails and the 1,000 corpses swayed in midair, giving off a nauseating stench of rotting corpses. The girl in pink's eyes were filled with a momentary flash of disgust. Even though there were many pure-blooded ferocious beasts in the ancient battlefield, none of them could form inner cores and as such, they naturally could not speak in human tongue. There was someone else who spoke earlier. A bald figure that was barefooted sat on the Lu Wu's head. Draped in golden monk robes, the person's eyes were bright and his face shone brilliantly. The 1,000 corpses behind him formed a sea of blood and corpses as the cultivator seemed like a mighty Vajra with divine strength, untainted in the midst of everything. This was someone with the power to tame pure-blooded ferocious beast. Oh, it's a monk from Diamond Monastery. The girl in pink gazed at the sect badge on the monk's waist and recognized his background. Blinking her beautiful eyes, she had already stealthily released her flirtatious bewitchment secret skill of Pure Maiden Sect. The girl in pink was none other than Demonis G of Pure Maiden Sect. Smiling brightly, she asked, Hehe, how should I address you, Reverend? I'm Ju Chen. The Diamond Monastery monk was expressionless and unmoved. Demonis G's bewitchment had no effect on him at all. Reverend Ju Chen. Pitifully, Demonis G asked, as someone of the Buddhist monasteries, why do you not have any compassion at all? How could you spout such venomous words of cursing me to enter the 18 levels of hell? Demonis G's eyes had a trace of bewitchment that could stir one's heart. That was the result of pushing Pure Maiden Sect's secret skill to its limit. The bewitching eye. Earlier on, Demonis G did not even use this secret skill to bewitch the few cultivators. The magic of her movements and smiles were enough to mesmerize everyone else. The expression of Monk Ju Chen changed slightly as his thick brows were suddenly raised. Widening his eyes, his eyeballs bulged gently in a mighty and terrifying manner. 2 rays of golden light burst from Monk Ju Chen's eyes and clashed with Demonis G's bewitching eye. In the cultivation world, there were extremely few secret skills that required cultivation of the eye. Of the secret skills, those that were extremely strong were even rarer. The reason was simple: the eyes were simply way too fragile. If one cultivated them wrongly, it would be easy for them to injure their own eyes. The enraged diamond gaze of the Buddhist monasteries and the bewitching eye of Pure Maiden Sect were considered top-tier eye secret skills. Ordinary cultivators would lose their guts instantly upon meeting with the enraged diamond gaze. In fact, some of them might even be scared out of their wits right away. As for the bewitching eye, it could affect a cultivator's mind, causing him to lose himself and his rationality. A person's heart is connected to their eyes. That was the reason why top-tier eye secret skills could affect a cultivator's mind. Ha! Opening his mouth, Monk Ju Chen roared. His voice was like a bell, rumbling like thunder and filled with a righteous and holy aura. How dare you, Demonis! Although you're at death's door, you're so insolent to release such an evil skill to try and disrupt my mind. You deserve to die for your crimes. Demonis G's heart palpitated as she grunted and her face turned paler. Even though there were no swords and sabers involved in their exchange, it was even more dangerous than anything else. While casting the bewitching eye, Demonis G was also attacking Monk Ju Chen's mind verbally. If Ju Chen's mind stirred and revealed an opening, it would have been easy for Demonis G to control him. However, it was a pity that Demonis G encountered a monk of Diamond Monastery. The Buddhist monks lack desires in their heart, spending their days in Zen rituals and paying their respects to Buddha. Finding tranquility in their six senses, they were the most stable mentally. Furthermore, Diamond Monastery possessed the eye secret skill, Enraged Diamond Gaze. In terms of power, it was the greatest nemesis of the bewitching eye. Of all the Buddhist monasteries, Demonis G was truly unlucky to have encountered the successor of Diamond Monastery who was the most effective in countering her. After a single exchange, Demonis G was disadvantaged. Damned monk! Realizing that her secret skill was useless and countered immediately, Demonis G could not help but feel enraged and hollered, "What are you shouting for? The reason why your name has a Chen in it is because your master wants you to get rid of your anger. But now, you've already broken that vow of anger. Demonis, today, I'm not only going to break my vow of anger, I'm even going to break my vow of killing." Monk Ju Chen's expression was calm as he stood up slowly from the top of the Lu Wu's head. Gritting her teeth angrily, Demonis G remarked coldly, "Damned monk, you Buddhists are particular about karma. Where's the logic in you attacking me for no reason? Subduing evil and fiends, that's the logic. The reason why I attacked was clearly because those guys had lust and desire towards me." Demonis G clenched her teeth. "Damned monk, you're not even asking me to find out the truth first. Enough with your excuses, Demonis. Die." Monk Ju Chen leaped down from the Lu Wu's head and 8 spirit meridians shone beneath his monk robes as spirit energy churned like a tsunami. Boom! Extending his palm, Monk Ju Chen's body shimmered brightly as though he was covered in a layer of gold foil. It gave off a holy aura and was unavoidably blinding. A gigantic palm descended from above, covering the entire skies as it engulfed Demonis G within. Most of Demonis G's techniques were focused on bewitchment. There was no way she was a match for Monk Ju Chen in terms of combat strength. Seeing how domineering the palm's aura was, Demonis G tapped her feet on the ground and retreated, wanting to escape from Monk Ju Chen's attack range. "Demonis, there's nowhere for you to run." Instantly, Monk Ju Chen realized Demonis G's intentions and shouted, taking 8 consecutive steps to arrive instantly. In the blink of an eye, the both of them were less than 10 feet apart. In the Buddhist monasteries, Diamond Monastery was the strongest in body tempering and melee combat. At that distance, even the fiend heirs of Malevolent Earth Sect, Cloud Rain Sect and Illusion Fiend Cult would be doomed, let alone Demonis G of Pure Maiden Sect. In the fiend sects, only the fiend heir of Overlord Palace could compete against Diamond Monastery in melee combat. Monk Ju Chen unleashed killing moves one after another, and after 3 moves, Demonis G had nowhere to run. The veil covering her face had long disappeared. Her life was hanging on a thread. Die! Monk Ju Chen released yet another roar that shocked one's mind as a golden luster shone on the gigantic fist as it closed it to Demonis G. The golden light was blinding and the wind from the fist was like a sharp knife, causing Demonis G's cheeks to ache. Her heart sank. To think that as the pure maiden of Pure Maiden Sect, I would end up dying here. Before she could finish her thoughts, the situation on the battlefield changed. Chapter 434, Suppress. Chapter 434, Suppress. A tall and mighty figure had unknowingly appeared behind Demonis G. Reaching out, that person grabbed Demonis G's arm and yanked her backwards before throwing his left fist out to meet the bedazzling golden fist of Monk Ju Chen in a heavy clash. That punch was domineering and seemed as though it was going to carve a hole in the heavens to shoot down the sun. There were not many people who could go head-on against the successor of Diamond Monastery barehanded in melee combat. Apart from the successor of the Immortal sect, Glass Palace, the Fiend Heir of Overlord Palace had the capability as well. Any other cultivator from other sects would have to avoid him. From her side eye, Demonis G saw that the person did not have any sect badge on his waist. Furthermore, he was wearing a rough linen shirt and was clearly not a cultivator from Glass Palace or Overlord Palace. If that was the case, that person was definitely bound to suffer immensely if he chose to take on Monk Ju Chen's fist head-on. Don't. Demonis G tried to warn him, but it was too late. She had a pained expression, as though she could already envision the tragic scene of the arm of the burly man snapped into a bloody mess. You're asking for trouble. Monk Ju Chen revealed a mocking expression. Bang! Their fists collided with a dull thud of defeat. The mocking expression on Monk Ju Chen's face disappeared as quickly as it appeared as his eyes narrowed into a thin line. Demonis G was dumbfounded in shock. The golden light on Monk Ju Chen's fist was dispersed by the burly man's fist, scattering everywhere like sparks. As the fists collided, a visible air fluctuation spread out along with a heat wave that possessed an astonishing aftershock. The burly man did not even take a half step back and his fist was completely undamaged. On the contrary, Monk Ju Chen staggered 3 steps back and his expression gradually darkened. The burly man pulled Demonis G by the arm and brought her behind him. With a calm expression and a sharp gaze, he glared at Monk Ju Chen. The situation came to a momentary calm with the appearance of the burly man. Both Monk Ju Chen and Demonis G were trying to size up the burly man, wanting to make out something from him. He had rough facial features, thick eyebrows, large eyes, and a wide nose and mouth. Bulky, he was 2 meters tall and his palms and arms were thick as were his fingers. His gripped fists resembled a pair of hammers. Demonis G's brow raised slightly. She could not see anything familiar about the burly man. She was certain that prior to this, she had never seen this man before, much less know him. However, for some unknown reason, she felt that something was amiss. She tilted her head, deep in thought. After looking at the burly man from head to toe a couple of times without any conclusion, Monk Ju Chen could not help but ask with a deep voice, "Patron, what sect or faction are you from?" "I've got no sect or faction." The burly man replied indifferently. "Amitabha." Chanting a Buddhist proclamation, Monk Ju Chen's gaze gradually turned cold as he said icily, "Since you're an itinerant cultivator, I'd advise you not to get involved in this lest you attract trouble for yourself." "Oh." The burly man smiled and replied aggressively, "If I insist on interfering, what can you do? You do know that the girl behind you is the pure maiden of the fiend sects. She is someone that kills without batting an eyelid and her hands are deeply soaked in blood." Monk Ju Chen's voice turned increasingly louder along with his divinity of Buddhism. "You've got plenty of blood on your hands too, Reverend. I'm from the Buddhist monasteries but she's from the fiend sect. So?" The two of them spoke in a tit-for-tat manner and instantly, the atmosphere on the battlefield turned tense, filled with killing intent. However, at that moment, Demonis G felt an unprecedented calmness in her heart. It was as though the mighty back view of the figure in front of her could defend her from any danger, even if she was someone from the fiend sects. Well. Monk Ju Chen nodded repeatedly. When he opened his eyes, 2 golden beams of light shot out and his aura surged. The secret skill of the Buddhist monasteries, enraged diamond gaze. Secret skills could not only affect the minds of cultivators, they were also released instantly, making it difficult for opponents to defend against. Watch out. Demonis G had already sensed that something was amiss the moment she saw Monk Ju Chen's gaze shine. However, just as her warning came forth, her voice was drowned by Monk Ju Chen's sacred voice of the Buddhist monasteries. "Since you choose to protect that girl, You're choosing to be enemies with Diamond Monastery, the Buddhist monasteries and all the righteous Immortal sect. Monk Ju Chen berated, and every single word of his struck at one's mind like a heavy bell. That was a sound secret skill unique to the Buddhist monasteries, the lion roar. These two skills were what Monk Ju Chen used earlier on to injure Demoness Ji instantly and seize the advantage. Under normal circumstances, ordinary cultivators would suffer blinding pain in their eyes and buzzing in their ears against these two instantaneous techniques. In a moment of panic, they would definitely reveal openings. However, the burly man's expression was unchanged and a demonic glint shone in his eyes. The two incoming streaks of gold light disappeared in midair. Taking a deep breath of air, the burly man's chest puffed up and his body swelled a little as if he was a balloon. The next moment, he opened his mouth and interrupted Monk Ju Chen with an immensely powerful shout, "Fight!" Boom! The moment he said that, the heavens shook. An explosion like thunder crushed over heavily, as if a massive army was trampling through everything. Before Monk Ju Chen could finish his sentence, he was interrupted by the burly man and the air in his chest was blocked. It was extremely unbearable as his face turned pale, impacting his aura. The two of them were extremely close and with a single huge stride, the burly man arrived before Monk Ju Chen almost in the blink of an eye. Boom! He stomped his feet heavily on the ground and the earth and mountains shook. In fact, two gigantic ravines appeared in the ground behind him as the mud was overturned. Demoness Ji was shocked and her alluring lips spread open slightly as she watched everything in disbelief. Just who was this person? Even pure-blooded ferocious beasts wouldn't cause such an impact if they crossed rampantly. The pure-blooded ferocious beast, Lu Wu, who was standing behind Monk Ju Chen, was initially watching coldly from the sidelines. However, it was shocked when it sensed the aura of the burly man and its fur stood on end, causing its entire body to expand greatly. This was the natural reaction of a demon beast when it sensed extreme danger. At that moment, in terms of aura, the burly man had already crushed Monk Ju Chen completely. Swoosh! The burly man reached out with his palm and descended from above, slapping towards Monk Ju Chen with an aura that threatened to engulf the vast lands. His fingers spread open and his massive palm seemed like it was about to consume the heavens and suppress the eight desolate. Now that he lost the initiative, Monk Ju Chen was shocked. He did not have time to dig out his Buddhist spirit weapons from his storage bag and could only prop up his arms in defense against the colossal force. Bang! The burly man's palm crushed heavily against Monk Ju Chen's arms. Instantly, Monk Ju Chen seemed like he had turned shorter as his feet sank deep into the ground beyond his knees. At that moment, Demoness Ji felt like she was witnessing a great demon god that stood tall in the sky, looking down at the vast world as he crushed an ant with his gigantic palm. At this moment, the successor of Diamond Monastery had lost all his aura and was akin to an ant squashed in the mud. Crack, crack, crack. Both sides were still in a deadlock. However, the sound of bones shifting could be heard from within Monk Ju Chen's body, as if his bones were about to fall apart, grinding endlessly in a jarring manner. Chapter 435, Get the Hell Back. Chapter 435, Get the Hell Back. Monk Ju Chen was like a wooden block that was being hammered into the mud by the colossal palm of the burly man. Without any way of escaping, his bones creaked wildly. Melee combat fights were the most dangerous and victory was often determined within a few exchanges of moves. By underestimating his enemy, Monk Ju Chen's enraged diamond gaze and lion roar, two of the Buddhist secret skills, were countered consecutively and in a moment of daze, the burly man seized the initiative. His single mistake had led him to this state. Right now, Monk Ju Chen was motionlessly pushed against the ground by the palm. Even if Monk Ju Chen had 1,000 more techniques, he couldn't use any of them at this moment, nor could he summon the Buddhist spirit weapons in his possession. This was a fight based completely on strength. As long as Monk Ju Chen was distracted and lost focus of his strength, he would be crushed into sludge by the burly man's palm without even a corpse left. Even Demoness Ji was dumbfounded. What was the background of this man? To think that he could pin the successor of Diamond Monastery motionlessly on the spot. Suddenly, the burly man nodded with a flicker of admiration in his eyes. The fact that you're able to withstand this is quite something. Indeed, Diamond Monastery is impressive. Demonis G was now tongue-tied. What was he doing? Wasn't his tone way too arrogant? In Tianhuang mainland, which cultivator had the rights to speak to the successor of Diamond Monastery in that manner? The strangest thing was that the burly man seemed to have meant what he said from the bottom of his heart. Of course, what was even more shocking was that Monk Ju Chen was totally focused and tense in this intense standoff of strength. He did not even dare to relax or breathe heavily. However, the burly man could still speak. In other words, he still had additional strength to spare. The burly man was none other than Su Zimo, who had changed his appearance. It was only natural that he had the rights to speak of such words, since even Pei Chunyu of Glass Palace was defeated by him. Su Zimo had attained lesser mastery of the orifice clearing section with his 7 orifices cleared, and he had extremely strong eyesight and hearing. Monk Ju Chen's enraged diamond gaze and lion roar could not affect his mind at all. A look of embarrassment flashed past Monk Ju Chen's eyes. He had never endured such humiliation and suppression as the successor of Diamond Monastery. Su Zimo's condescending attitude had ignited Monk Ju Chen's anger completely. "Do you really think that you can win me just like this?" Grinding his teeth noisily, Monk Ju Chen's eyes gradually shone with a golden flicker as he said slowly, "Develop a mind that abides nowhere." Clang. The moment he said that, a loud bang sounded from Monk Ju Chen's chest, possessing a resolute metallic intent. It was as if an indestructible power that could penetrate rocks was about to pierce through and gush out from Monk Ju Chen's chest. Su Zimo could clearly sense that the metallic sound earlier on was Monk Ju Chen's heartbeat. After it sounded, Monk Ju Chen's bloodline churned and the strength in his arms increased significantly, steadying his wavering body instantly. Nodding, Su Zimo said as his eyes lit up, "Interesting." Demonis G hurriedly remarked, "Watch out. That's the profoundness in Diamond Monastery's secret manual, Diamond Sutra. By developing a mind that abides in nowhere, one is able to cultivate a diamond heart." Clang. A heartbeat sounded once more, cutting through Demonis G's voice. This time round, the metallic sound was even clearer and more ear-piercing, as if it could destroy everything and penetrate all beings. The blood in Monk Ju Chen's body circulated slowly, giving off the sound of flowing lead mercury. Mercury blood amalgam. That was almost the limit of the power of bloodline. The only thing above that was the legendary tsunami blood. Monk Ju Chen's arm strength increased significantly and he propped up Su Zimo's palm. As his aura climbed, his eyes shone with frenzy. Demonis G continued, "Each time the diamond heart thumps, it would swap blood with the marrow and refine his tendons and bones. At the limit of its cultivation, one's body becomes indestructible and can even fight against pure-blooded ferocious beast." Clang, clang, clang. As though he was trying to prove how scary the diamond heart was, the heartbeat coming from Monk Ju Chen pounded even faster as his blood raced within his body. Swoosh. The sound of lead mercury was endless. "Patron, you are too naive to think that you can kill me with a single palm strike." Slowly, Monk Ju Chen spoke with a metallic voice that was forceful and resolute. His body was covered with a layer of shiny golden luster. The power of bloodline that was triggered by the diamond heart had already cruised through his limbs to every single part of his body. "Fu." Su Zimo smiled gently. "Dong." Suddenly, an explosion roared without warning, as though a godly being was beating the heavenly drums fervently, giving off shuddering, forceful thuds. That sound was so close that it suppressed the sound of Monk Ju Chen's heartbeat. Pest. Monk Ju Chen's expression changed starkly. Since he was opposite Su Zimo, he could naturally tell that the sound was coming from the other party's chest. Suddenly, he felt a sense of uneasiness. There was no time for Monk Ju Chen to think as he propped his arms up forcefully. Churning his power of bloodline to its limits, he exerted strength in both legs and tried leaping up to break free from Su Zimo's suppression. Angrily, Monk Ju Chen roared, "Break!" Bang! Boom! Boom! Suddenly, a thunderous bang sounded from within Su Zimo's body. It was forceful and massive, similar to how waves crashed onto shores. Standing in front of Su Zimo, Monk Ju Chen felt like he was hallucinating. It felt as though he was a small boat in a raging sea that could capsize at any moment, washing him away without a corpse left. That wasn't the force of a human. That was the might of the universe. Tsunami blood. Demonis G's ears twitched when she heard that sound as she exclaimed in shock. Throughout history, it was known that the limit of bloodline cultivation was at tsunami blood level. There were extremely few cultivators who had managed to accomplish it. She had come across one of them before. Back then, underground, with the existence of the ancient spirit lock formation, that person single-handedly defeated 5 fiend heirs in a domineering and decisive manner. Although many years had passed, the scene remained in the depths of her memories as though it had happened yesterday. No matter how she tried, Demonis G could not compare the burly man before her with the green-robed cultivator from her recollections who had delicate facial features. Get the hell back. Suzimo's expression was calm and as was his tone. However, his blood surged like a tsunami in a terrifying manner. His muscular palm was filled with blood and green veins popped out as it expanded significantly once more, blocking Monk Ju Chen's line of sight and any path of escape before crushing down savagely on him. Ooah! Grunting dully, Monk Ju Chen made use of the burst power from his diamond heart and leaped up. Before he could break free from Suzimo's palm, he was pushed down once more. The gold light on Monk Ju Chen's arms dimmed. Poof! His flesh exploded into a blood mist. Monk Ju Chen's entire body shuddered, bending his spine while his knees were almost on the ground. He felt as if there was a towering mountain above him, as if the heavens had collapsed and wanted to destroy him. Chapter 436, Retreating in Defeat. Chapter 436, Retreating in Defeat. If this carried on, Monk Ju Chen would be dead within 3 breaths. Roar. Suddenly, a ferocious beast roared deafeningly. A dark shadow darted over and covered the skies, carrying forth a tragic aura that was suffocating. The Lu Wu that was dozens of feet tall lunged over with a stench of blood. Its eyes were vicious as it bared its sharp fangs and claws with a menacing expression. Suzimo furrowed his brows slightly. Pure-blooded ferocious beasts were extremely strong and even perfect spirit weapons were not superior against their fangs and claws. In fact, there were even some special weapons that were crafted from the bones, fangs, and claws of pure-blooded ferocious beasts. Good move. Suzimo's expression was unchanged as he continued suppressing Monk Ju Chen with one hand. His other hand turned into a fist and his large tendons pulsated with his bloodline. Expanding swiftly, his fist was akin to a purplish-green seal with a torrential blood chi. He stood on the spot like a towering ancient god as he smashed that purplish-green seal of a fist heavily towards the Lu Wu's head. The aura of that punch was terrifying and in an instant, even the air ruptured with a deafening bang. As a pure-blooded ferocious beast, the Lu Wu naturally knew how powerful that punch was. Although its bones were tough, it did not dare to fight head-on against Suzimo's fist as it hurriedly received the blow with its claws. Bang! There was a deafening sound. The Lu Wu shuddered and fell from midair. Suzimo stood where he was without budging at all as his tendons and bones sounded loudly. His eyes were bright, filled with a torrential combat intent. Demonis G felt her heart skip a beat. This was a truly ruthless man. Humans were born with weak bodies without sharp fangs or claws. The fact that someone was able to cultivate to a point where he could contend against pure-blooded ferocious beasts was simply too rare. What was even scarier was that the burly man was actually fighting against 2 beings at the same time. Suppressing Monk Ju Chen with one hand, he fought against the pure-blooded ferocious beast with the other. Despite that, the shocking thing was that his combat strength was not diminished and he was not disadvantaged even though his strength was divided. When did such a ferocious person appear on Tianhuang mainland? Which sect did this cultivator belong to? The thing that confused Demonis G the most was that she could not detect traces of secret skills or techniques from any sect from this burly man. Roar. Although the Lu Wu fell from midair, it was not injured and leaped up once more with a jerk. It shook its 9 tails and the 1,000 corpses that were skewered on them exploded. Blood spewed everywhere, forming a mountain of corpses and blood. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The Lu Wu tread on that mountain of corpses and blood and charged over with its 9 tails swaying like whips. The wind howled as it engulfed Su Zimo. The reason why pure-blooded ferocious beasts were so strong was not purely because of the purity of their bloodline and their terrifying strength. It was because they possessed killing moves that other demon beasts did not have. Take the hook snake back in the Fog Valley for example. Its tail had a gigantic hook that was laced with poison. That hook was indestructible and sharp. Even Night Spirit would not be able to defend against it with its body. It was the same for the Lu Wu before them. Swaying behind, its 9 tails formed a sealed space and they could attack from various directions. It was like dealing with 9 steel whips that were extremely difficult and troublesome to defend against. Piak. Reaching out, Su Zimo scooped in midair and grabbed one of the Lu Wu's thick tails. However, he could not defend against the other 8 tails. Even with his physique, his organs would suffer from the impact of 8 tails smashing on his body. Left with no other choice, Su Zimo released his palm that was holding Monk Ju Chen down. Instantly, Monk Ju Chen seized the moment of opportunity and his diamond heart pounded, surging his body with his diamond bloodline. Leaping from the ground, he ran off into the distance without turning back at all. He wouldn't have been able to hold on if it lasted for 2 more breaths. Drenched from head to toe in cold sweat, he felt as though he had just passed through Hell's Gates. Boom! Su Zimo stomped on the ground and he retreated rapidly. He gripped a tail with both hands and exerted strength in his arms just as he was retreating. The tremendous force was transferred to the Lu Wu through its tail. It shuddered immensely and its body nearly broke apart. Instantly, the other 8 tails lost their strength and directions. Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and yanked that thick tail, lifting the massive body of the Lu Wu into the air before swinging it to slam onto the ground. It was a deafening crush. Dust clouds rose everywhere. Even Demonis G was dumbfounded. Everything happening before her had completely exceeded her expectations. How terrifyingly strong must one be to be able to do this? A short moment later, the dust dissipated and there was a huge crater on the ground with cracks all around it. Lying in the middle, the Lu Wu's eyes were dim and it groaned weakly. Demonis G's throat moved as she subconsciously gulped. The Lu Wu's bones were most likely crushed with that. In that short period of time, Monk Ju Chen had already escaped to the horizon in the distance. Gazing back, his face had a faint golden shade and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. This time round, he had suffered a huge setback. Su Zimo's first attack wasn't that bad. After all, Monk Ju Chen managed to defend against it. However, with the second attack, Su Zimo's aura rose. Coupled with the fact that he was pinned on the ground, Monk Ju Chen's body could not take it at all and the flesh on his arms were ripped while his organs had shifted position. It was truly an aggrieving battle for Monk Ju Chen. While Su Zimo's strength was shocking, he felt that if it came to a life-and-death battle, he might not necessarily lose to the former. As soon as they clashed, he was pinned to the spot by Su Zimo and he couldn't use any of his skills at all. He could not even manage to bring out his Buddhist spirit weapons, which were the bare basics. If he had 2 of his Buddhist spirit weapons in his storage bag, the diamond staff and golden bells, his fighting strength would have been doubled at least and he would have definitely killed the burly man here. Although those were his thoughts, Monk Ju Chen no longer dared to fight Su Zimo given his current condition. Burly patron, I underestimated you today. If I meet you again, I'll definitely take you down. Monk Ju Chen's voice sounded from the distance, filled with endless indignance. Haha. Su Zimo threw his head back and laughed, declaring loudly, Monk, if we meet again and you dare go against me, you won't be able to run again. Monk Ju Chen thought that he did not display his true strength. However, little did he know that it was the same for Su Zimo. If Su Zimo took on his demon form and burst forth with his blood chi, he would have taken Monk Ju Chen's life with the first palm strike. In his opinion, even though Monk Ju Chen was a Buddhist, this was no kind soul. There were 1,000 corpses on the 9 tails of the Lu Wu behind him. In other words, it meant that there were even more cultivators who had died in his hands in the ancient battlefield. That was the reason why Su Zimo made the remark about how the Reverend had plenty of blood on his hands too. Furthermore, There was no way that Su Zimo could sit by idly and watch monk Ju Chen attempt to kill Demoness Ji without understanding the situation at all. Watching by the sidelines the entire time, Demoness Ji even forgot to step out and assist the burly man. On the one hand, it was because the burly man's methods had stunned her. On the other hand, there was a doubt she had in her mind. With a cool gaze, she looked at Su Zimo intently, as though she was trying to decipher something. Chapter 437, Doubt. Chapter 437, Doubt. Since he wanted to change his appearance and hide his identity, there was no way Su Zimo could acknowledge Demoness Ji. He turned to leave after forcing monk Ju Chen back. All of a sudden, a fragrance wafted over. A beautiful figure stood in front of him and blocked his path. Closing in, a smiling face looked at Su Zimo with deep interest without blinking. Under Demoness Ji's stare, although Su Zimo looked calm on the surface, he felt a little weak internally. He was worried that he might have revealed any mistakes, exposing his disguise to Demoness Ji. Each time he was faced with this quirky Demoness, Su Zimo always had headaches. Frowning slightly, he was about to avoid Demoness Ji and walk to the side when a thought struck him. If I leave just like this, she'll definitely suspect me and might even deduce my identity. At that thought, he turned to Demoness Ji and glared at her expressionlessly, asking coldly, "What's the matter? Who are you?" Mad Blade. Su Zimo had already thought up of a name for himself. "Do we know one another?" she asked again. "No. Since we don't, why did you save me?" "Save you?" Momentarily stunned, a mocking look flickered through Su Zimo's eyes as he sneered, "You're overthinking it, miss. I merely wanted to fight that monk. Saving you was just a matter of convenience." "You're lying." Suddenly, Demoness Ji's eyes shone brightly as she declared. Su Zimo raised his brow. Harumphing coldly, Demoness Ji continued, "When you first appeared, you saved me immediately and protected me behind you. It was an extremely natural reaction without hesitation. Do you still dare to claim that you don't know me? You were blocking my line of sight and affected my performance. It's only natural that I had to drag you to the side," Su Zimo sneered in reply. "All right." Demoness Ji nodded and took a step forward aggressively. "By standing in front of me, you revealed your back entirely to me. I'm someone from the fiend sects and yet you were totally unguarded and trusting towards me. Despite that, you claim that you don't know me." It was undeniable that Demoness Ji was truly too smart. Su Zimo thought that he had not made any mistakes after changing his appearance, to think that he had revealed such a flaw. Just as Demoness Ji had said, how could one of two people who had just met trust the other party so easily as to reveal their backs exposed entirely? After a moment of silence, Su Zimo replied indifferently, "Even if I expose my back to you, do you think that you can injure me?" Although it was a brazen statement, in reality, it avoided Demoness Ji's question. She declared again, "Also, now that I'm not wearing my veil, there's no way anyone who's seeing my face for the first time can be as calm as you. You must have seen me before." Demoness Ji was truly qualified to say something like that. The pure maiden of the fiend sects was different from the fiend heirs. There was a fiend heir that corresponded to each cultivation realm within the fiend sects. For example, Shuiyang of Malevolent Earth sect was the number one amongst all the Foundation Establishment cultivators in the sect and hence, he was the Foundation Establishment fiend heir. There was another fiend heir at Golden Core Realm. Upon entering the Golden Core Realm, Shuiyang would lose his title as the fiend heir and if he wanted to become one, he would have to challenge the Golden Core fiend heir. The Golden Core fiend heir cannot deny the challenge as well. The fight to be a fiend heir of the fiend sects was extremely cruel and every single fiend heir was exceptional. They stood above countless corpses of their fellow sect mates and their hands were tainted with the same blood. Such competition was encouraged among the fiend sects. However, it was different for the pure maiden. From the Qi condensation realm all the way to the Golden Core realm or even higher, there was only a single disciple of pure maiden sect that could obtain the true inheritance of the sect. Unless the current generation's pure maiden dies or loses her qualifications, pure maiden sect would not select a new successor. Pure Maiden sect had extremely high expectations for their pure maidens, and it was not an exaggeration to say that the candidate is 1 in a billion. Every generation's pure maiden was born with a natural charm that could topple worlds with every wink, smile and action of theirs. Once they were truly grown up, they would definitely be peerless demonesses who could bewitch the masses. In the battle earlier, Demoness G was totally countered because she was dealing with the successor of Diamond Monastery. If it was the successor of any other sect, they would have to consider if they could handle the bewitchment of the pure maiden of the fiend sects. Countless years ago, there was a generation's pure maiden who even managed to bewitch a legacy disciple of that generation's Diamond Monastery. The latter was totally subdued and joined the fiend sects, shocking the entire cultivation world. That generation, Diamond Monastery turned into a laughingstock of the cultivation world. That was the reason why Diamond Monastery and Pure Maiden sect had a long-standing feud that spanned beyond their different DAOs. Ever since Su Zimo appeared, he was too composed. Despite seeing Demoness G's face, there was no ripple in his eyes. It was only natural that Demoness G became suspicious. Turning around, Su Zimo's gaze shifted slowly on Demoness G. Finally, his bold gaze landed on Demoness G's flawless and almost breathtaking face, grinning. "Woman, you're quite interesting. Are you hinting to me that you want to be my DAO companion?" Demoness G furrowed her brows slightly. She was extremely familiar with the look that the burly man was giving off. It was a kind of gaze that made her disgusted. Although Pure Maiden sect and Cloud Rain sect seemed similar, they were vastly different. Cloud Rain sect cultivated the DAO of indulgence. Although every generation's Pure Maiden cultivated the DAO of bewitchment, they had to maintain their chastity for the sake of their DAO. If a Pure Maiden became someone's DAO companion, it would be equivalent to them crippling their entire lives' cultivation. They would also be stripped of the title of Pure Maiden and expelled from the sect. If a Pure Maiden lost her cultivation and the backing of the fiend sects while retaining her flawlessly charming looks, their fates were clearly imaginable. They would most likely become the slaves of other cultivators and live a life worse than death. Although countless cultivators had fallen to Demoness G's charms up till this point of her cultivation, she had never had any physical contact with any man. Apart from a single person. A green-robed figure flashed through Demoness G's mind and she bit her lips. That day, the two of them were stuck in a stone coffin that was extremely cramped. Coupled with the fact that they were being washed away by the river undercurrent, that man had taken quite a bit of advantage of her in the darkness. Initially, Demoness G thought that the burly man before her was that man. But now, given the burly man's crude actions and language, she shook her head and lamented internally, "Have I really thought too much?" Chapter 438, Sword Cultivator. Chapter 438, Sword Cultivator. Su Zimo finally heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Demoness G avoid him. Internally, he felt a tinge of guilt. He had no other choice in order to hide his identity. "Why? You're unwilling?" Su Zimo's expression darkened. Since he was acting, he had to go all the way. Demoness G was stunned for a moment when she saw that the burly man was displeased. Instantly, she smiled with a charm that struck at one's soul and replied tenderly, "Please don't be angry, benefactor. There's been a misunderstanding and I mistook you for an old friend of mine. Let me express my apologies." With that, she bowed over with an apologetic look. Su Zimo harumphed and did not say anything more. With a flicker in her eyes, Demoness G asked again, "Are you not going to ask me who my old friend is, benefactor?" "Not interested." Su Zimo waved it off and walked into the distance at an extremely fast speed while saying from far away, "I'm only interested in the Human Emperor's palace. I want to head to the Human Emperor's palace too. Shall we go together?" Demoness G yelled from behind. There was naturally no way Su Zimo would reply as he went silent, pretending to have heard nothing. They had only met and he was nearly exposed by Demoness G. If they were to travel together, she might truly see through his disguise. Su Zimo. Suddenly, a shout sounded from behind without any warning at all. Instinctively, Su Zimo wanted to stop in his tracks and turn back. That was the most natural reaction for anybody. However, in a flash, He realized what was going on and continued moving ahead, disappearing from Demonis G's line of sight in the blink of an eye. When she saw that, Demonis G frowned slightly and murmured in deep thought, "Seems like it's not him." Suzimo only slowed down after he was far away and heaved a sigh of relief. That was close. Demonis G was the one who shouted earlier on. If Suzimo reacted slower against her sudden shout, he would have definitely revealed a flaw and would be exposed to Demonis G. That last truly is. Muttering softly, Suzimo shook his head and flew towards the human Empress Palace that was at the center of the ancient battlefield. 10 days later. The human Empress Palace descended slowly. As it got closer to the ground, the aura that it exuded also turned increasingly terrifying. 500 kilometers around the range of the ancient palace, all the ancient living beings and remnant beasts have shifted away, not daring to linger near it. Although countless years have passed, the remnant might of the human emperor was massive and could still suppress the 8 desolates while instilling fear in the demons. So, that's the human emperor's palace. It's truly impressive. The pressure is way too immense. Even though I'm at 7 Meridian Foundation establishment, I don't even dare to head forth. It's hard to imagine the type of pressure that one has to endure if they start fighting within the perimeter of the human Empress Palace's shrouded area. Hurry, look. Is that a divine dragon that's etched on that stone pillar? It looks so realistic that it seems like it's alive. The appearance of the human Empress Palace attracted cultivators from all over the ancient battlefield. One layer after another, everyone in that dense crowd looked up at the ancient palace that was in the middle of an electric ocean and a vortex of dark clouds with shocked expressions. Not everyone was as logical as Tang Yu to be able to repress their curiosity to avoid being implicated in the bloodshed. I'll give you guys 3 breaths worth of time to leave. Anyone who is still here after that will die. Right then, an icy voice sounded from outside the perimeter, carrying a sharp edge that could slice through everything. Everyone turned over. Behind them, a long-robed cultivator strode over with a sheathed long sword hanging casually from his waist. Twirling his long, slender fingers casually, he had a cold expression. How do we leave this place within 3 breaths? Many cultivators frowned. 1. Expressionlessly, the long-robed cultivator lowered his head and declared, "Who is that? He sure is arrogant." Someone could not help but sneer. 2. The long-robed cultivator remarked once more. A sharp-eyed cultivator caught sight of the sect badge hanging from the person's waist and yelled with a shocked expression, "Sword Sect." He's probably the successor of Sword Sect, Hang Choyu. A massive commotion broke out from the crowd the moment they heard the word successor of Sword Sect. Right then, Hang Choyu's voice sounded once more. 3. Unknowingly, his slender fingers were already on the hilt of the sword on his waist. Gazing coldly at the crowd in front of him, he said, "You've already missed your final opportunity." Buzz. A peerless white flash shone. Nobody could describe the speed and power of that slash. The startling sword was bound to startle upon making its appearance. In that instant, all the cultivators facing Hang Choyu were blinded by that bedazzling sword beam and could not open their eyes. The next moment, they felt their throats turn cold as a warm, sticky liquid started spewing outside with a nauseating stench. It was fresh blood. Dozens of cultivators that stood in front of Hang Choyu fell at the same time. Collapsing to the ground, their throats were slit by the sword and they died, unable to rest in peace. Almost everyone who came to the vicinity of the human Empress Palace were at 7 Meridian Foundation establishment and were rather capable. However, those dozens of cultivators died on the spot without even having the chance to take out their spirit weapons. That was how terrifying the might of his single slash was. The cultivators behind him were horrified as they took out protection talismans from their storage bags and crushed them instantly. Right after, they summoned their flying swords and defensive spirit weapons such as shields and heart-protecting mirrors before calming down. Swash! By the time they were prepared and looked ahead, Hang Choyu had already vanished. A gentle breeze blew across. Hang Choyu had already charged into the crowd with his startling sword. A sword beam rose followed by a bloody flash. Some of the cultivators were cut in half with fresh blood spewing and countless nauseating internal organs flowing out. Protection talismans were nothing but paper against Hang Choyu's sword. Clang! A cultivator defended the startling sword with his shield, and a crisp sound echoed upon the collision. The joy in his eyes appeared for a brief moment before freezing on his face. With a dimmed gaze, his head tilted to the side as his life was cut away from him. A white scar appeared on that person's shield, and it broke into two by the time it fell to the ground. A superior-grade defensive spirit weapon could not even withstand a single slash from the startling sword. Many cultivators were terrified and fled into the distance, not daring to linger. That was the terror of a sword cultivator. Although the sword reigned supreme in Tianhuang mainland, not all cultivators who could use flying swords were considered as sword cultivators. For true sword cultivators, their swords never left their hands and vice versa. Unlike flying swords, sword cultivators used long swords with hilts. Sword cultivators were particular about the sword techniques, force, intent, and focused on cultivating the Tao of the sword so as to become one with the sword, to become one with the world, and in fact, to become one together with the sword and world together. In the cultivation world, it was difficult to declare that a particular lineage of cultivator, be it immortal, fiend or Buddhist, was the strongest. The end results would only be determined in a fight. However, there was a universally recognized fact in the cultivation world. The killing power of a sword cultivator was the strongest. Furthermore, among the immortal, fiend, and Buddhist sects, the sword cultivators of Sword Sect, one of the 9 immortal sects, were the most famous. The founder of Sword Sect was the #1 sword emperor of the ancient era. Chapter 439, Gathering of the Elites. Chapter 439, Gathering of the Elites. Wielding his sword, Hang Choyu charged into the crowd. Everywhere he passed through, hell broke loose as fresh blood spilled along with broken limbs in a tragic scene. The battlefield was in chaos. Shrieks, screams, yells, and the sound of killing were mixed together. Ta, ta, ta. From the south, a series of heavy footsteps arrived. Each time it sounded, the ground would tremble a little, as if a massive being with terrifying might was sprinting over. Many cultivators looked towards the voice. A buzz-cut cultivator headed over in huge strides. With a bare upper body, his exposed muscles shone with a bronze luster and his muscles bulged out one by one, giving off an explosive feeling of power. The person carried a gigantic iron spear on his shoulder that was pitch black and heavy. Exuding a violent aura from head to toe, his eyes burned as he laughed with a domineering aura. A bunch of reckless idiots. How dare you guys try to taint the human emperor's palace? Hurry, run. It's someone from the fiend sect. That's the fiend heir of Overlord Palace, Pang Yu. Run. Pang Yu slapped the spear on his shoulder and it bounced into the air as he shouted, "It's too late to run now." Swoosh. The iron spear tore through the air, turning into a dark ray of light as the wind howled. Following the spear, Pang Yu charged into the crowd. The cultivators that stood at the front were torn into pieces by the black spear. With a flick, the spear shattered all spirit weapons that collided with it. Kill. Pang Yu roared as he gripped the black spear single-handedly. He swept in reverse and sliced dozens of cultivators in the crowd into pieces with the strength of a massive army. Overlord Palace was the strongest body-tempering sect among the fiend sects. Even in Tianhuang mainland, they could be ranked as one of the top 3s, alongside Glass Palace and Diamond Monastery. As the fiend heir of Overlord Palace, it was easy to imagine how strong Pang Yu was in melee combat. This was a killing feast. 8 spirit meridians shone on Pang Yu's body and spirit energy surged while his bloodline roared. Everywhere his spear passed, people were bound to die as no one could withstand its sharpness. On the other side, a purple aura arrived. It produced an unrestrained pressure as though an emperor has arrived. Hurry, run. It's Ao Yuxiao of Purple Firmament Sect. The crowd in the east was also in a mess as cultivators scattered in all directions. A purple-robed cultivator stood in midair with a solemn expression. His entire body was shrouded by a billion streams of purple chi that shone with a brilliant myriad of colors. He possessed a dignified aura that looked down on the masses. Go. Waving his sleeves, Ao Yuxiao chided softly. The billion streams of purple chi that were initially surrounding him formed purple swords in midair that shone brightly as they tore the crowd into pieces like a group of purple clouds. The purple clouds swept across the skies and many cultivators fell from midair to their deaths. It was as Tang Yu had predicted, an unprecedented massacre was bound to happen in the ancient battlefield with the appearance of the human emperor's palace. The vicinity around the human emperor's palace turned into a slaughterhouse. It wasn't just Sword Sect and Purple Firmament Sect. Successors of the other 9 immortal sects appeared one after another and joined the battlefield. There was an icy cold fairy with white robes fluttering, a cultivator with lightning gaze and sped like the wind, a Dao cultivator with a Dao crown on his head and a horsetail whisk. From the fiend sects, apart from Pang Yu of Overlord Palace, Shangguan Yu of Cloud Rain Sect and the Fiend Heir of Illusion Fiend Cult appeared as well. The Fiend Heir of Zenith Sect, Bai Yu, charged into the battlefield with his Zenith Saber and killed ecstatically. Previously, Bai Yu escaped from the Saber Mountain Spirit Sea using blood escape after losing to Su Zimo. Now that he reappeared, he had already unlocked his 8th Spirit Meridian. To be fair, if he hadn't unlocked the 8th Meridian, he would have met his demise like all the cultivators here if he had come forth to take a look, let alone covet for the human emperor's palace. All the successors of the Immortal and Fiend sects had a tacit understanding and avoided one another temporarily while killing the other cultivators. Under such circumstances, the only ones who had a chance of escaping were those at 8 Meridian Foundation establishment. A burly man in linen clothes with thick brows and a rough face stood at the boundaries of the chaotic battlefield, watching everything coldly. Su Zimo had already arrived. Ding! Ding! Suddenly, a long and distant bell sounded from the west, seemingly able to cleanse one's soul and was extremely sacred. As the bell rang, a bald cultivator strode over. He was barefooted and dressed in monk robes. Wielding a golden bell, his eyes shone with a tinge of golden glow. It was the successor of Diamond Monastery, Monk Ju Chen. Amitabha. Monk Ju Chen held one palm vertically and let out a Buddhist proclamation with conviction. After 10 days, Monk Ju Chen's expression was normal and his aura was stable. It was clear that his injuries had already healed. Su Zimo nodded silently. As one of the 6 Buddhist monasteries, Diamond Monastery was truly capable. Previously, Monk Ju Chen's was heavily suppressed by Su Zimo and his flesh had exploded while his organs were dislocated. In 10 days, he had already recovered to his original state. That was proof that the monk's physique was truly extraordinary. Ding! Expressionlessly, Monk Ju Chen flicked his wrist gently and the bell sounded once more. A group of cultivators that were fleeing in midair on their flying swords shuddered. Their faces turned pale as they swayed unsteadily. Ding! The bell sounded once more. Thud! Thud! One after another, the cultivators fell from midair. By the time they reached the ground, their gazes were dim and blood flowed from all 7 orifices. They were already dead. 3 more monks and a nun strode slowly forward behind Monk Ju Chen. Although the 3 monks and the nun were all Buddhists as well, their attires were different as were the sect badges on their waists. Among the 6 Buddhist monasteries, 5 successors had appeared. It was a gathering of the elites. In this battle, some cultivators from other sects or itinerant cultivators who thought that they were strong finally understood the terror of the Immortal, Fiend, and Buddhist sects. Although they were also at 8 Meridian Foundation establishment, they were no match for the successors of those sect. The number of cultivators around the human emperor's palace decreased, but the number of corpses increased as blood flowed like a river. Finally, someone caught sight of Su Zimo who was standing at the boundaries. It was Bai Yu, the Fiend Heir of Zenith Sect. Naturally, he did not know that this was Su Zimo who had changed his appearance. Otherwise, he wouldn't have advanced alone without any reservations. Bai Yu's expression was cold as he held the bloody Zenith Saber in his hands. He glared at Su Zimo without any shred of emotion. Although Su Zimo was expressionless, a flicker of mockery flashed through his eyes. Die! Bai Yu swung his Zenith Saber and created a blooded arc in midair before it descended upon Su Zimo's head. Su Zimo's eyes shone brightly. Just as he was about to take action, a tender shout sounded from behind him. Stop. A fragrance wafted over. A pink ribbon tore through the air. Although it looked weak, it managed to fend off Bai Yu's attack. Right after, as if it was alive, the pink ribbon coiled itself along the body of the saber. Frowning, Bai Yu retracted his zenith saber hurriedly. Demonis G, what are you doing? He glared at the girl in pink that darted out from behind the burly man, asking in an unfriendly manner. Hee hee. By now, Demonis G had already covered herself with her veil again. Smiling gently, she glanced at Suzimo and said, "This is a friend I invited. He's on the side of the fiend sects." Chapter 440, Commencement of the Battle. Chapter 440, Commencement of the Battle. When he heard that, Suzimo frowned. Just as he was about to retort, Demonis G tiptoed beside his ear and whispered, "The human emperor's palace has just descended and everyone's aiming for the throne. The successors of the Immortal, Fiend, and Buddhist sects will tacitly eliminate the other cultivators first. If you're alone, you'll definitely be targeted. How about following the Fiend sects first? It'll only benefit you." In reality, Suzimo had two reasons for coming here. On the one hand, it was for the human emperor's palace. On the other hand, he wanted to test out the elites and paragons of the super sect. He had no fear of being targeted at all. However, Demonis G was leaning towards his ear flirtatiously. Her tender voice and scent of a maiden stirred Suzimo's heart, and he did not reject her, as if possessed. Right after, Suzimo snapped out of his daze in a shock and lamented internally, "Impressive. Demonis G's charm was everywhere and it was impossible to guard against her." As the pure maiden of the fiend sects, there was no need for her to cast a bewitchment technique specifically. Her presence alone was a form of bewitchment. The higher the cultivation realm of the pure maiden, the more terrifying their power of bewitchment would be. In the end, a single smile, wink, and emotion would be enough to intoxicate anyone to a point of no return. In the cultivation world, there were some charming techniques that relied on wearing half-covered clothes, using flirtatious gazes, language and daring actions to seduce men. However, compared to the Pure Maiden Sutra, those charming techniques were wildly inferior. By the end of every day, the Pure Maiden of the Fiend sects was a peerless beauty that could overthrow the entire world. Pure, clean, awe-inspiring and inviolable, a single subtle flirtatious look from her eyes would be enough for an ancient mighty figure to submit to her whims. Humph. Sizing Suzimo from head to toe, Bai Yu sneered, "It's just a lover that you've found. What rights does he have to be compared to us fiend heirs?" Hee hee. Demonis G chuckled. How arrogant. I wonder who were the ones who were beaten to a pulp by a friend that I randomly found back then in that underground area. Upon hearing that, Bai Yu's expression darkened and a few other fiend heirs looked terrible as well. That was a humiliation for them that no one was willing to speak of. Pang Yu swung his black iron spear and turned around after killing the last few cultivators, striding over in huge steps. The tip of the spear fell naturally to the ground and sparks flew everywhere as it trawled the ground. "Where's that scholar?" Arriving in front of Demonis G, he asked loudly with a fiery battle intent in his eyes. The scholar that Pang Yu was referring to was naturally Suzimo. Pouting her lips, Demonis G rolled her eyes. "How should I know?" Suddenly, Bai Yu said, "He came to the ancient battlefield too. I've seen him." Oh! When the few fiend heirs heard that, their expressions changed and killing intent flashed through their eyes. Pausing for a moment, Bai Yu shook his head again. "However, I don't think he's here. I didn't spot any signs of him." Bai Yu was thoroughly humiliated after retreating with a loss after the battle at Saber Mountain Spirit Sea, and there was naturally no way he would take the initiative to mention that. The illusion fiend cult heir harumphed coldly. "That scholar has got some brains. If he dares show himself, I'll definitely create a bloody hole in his body using my iron spear." Pang Yu's expression was haughty as he slammed the iron spear in his hand onto the ground heavily. Instantly, a series of cracks appeared and his murderous aura was daunting. Suzimo's expression was calm and there were no ripples in his eyes. Shifting his gaze, Pang Yu sized up Suzimo and nodded while smiling. "Not bad, you've got some guts. I'll forcibly acknowledge you of being qualified to stand shoulder to shoulder with us fiend heirs. Shangguan Yu of Cloud Rain sect remarked casually, since Shui Yang of Malevolent Earth sect isn't here yet, we'll let this person replace him for now as a helper. Waving his folding fan lightly, Shangguan Yu looked cool and suave. Despite the fact that he had just killed more than 100 cultivators, his clothes and hair were still neat. Hey, what's your name? Pang Yu looked at Su Zimo with a slightly raised head. Mad Blade, Su Zimo replied. Mad Blade, haha. Pang Yu laughed. You're quite arrogant. I wonder how your saber techniques are like. Bai Yu remarked coldly, in the cultivation world, most people with such loud titles are only SOSO in terms of capabilities. You can try me. Su Zimo said indifferently. Do you have a death wish? Bai Yu's expression changed as killing intent rose in his heart. You're wild. Interesting. Sweeping his iron spear, Pang Yu blocked Bai Yu and shook his head with a stern expression. Don't fight first. Something isn't right. Everyone followed Pang Yu's gaze. The battlefield was mostly cleaned up and the only people left under the cover of the Human Empress Palace were the successors of the Immortal, Fiend, and Buddhist sects. Among them, successors from 7 of the 9 Immortal sects were present, including Hang Qiuyu of Sword Sect and Ao Yuxiao of Purple Firmament Sect. Of the 6 Buddhist monasteries, 5 successors were present. Apart from monk Ju Chen of Diamond Monastery, there were monks from Hollow Monastery, Formless Monastery, Wisdom Monastery, and a nun from Clear Heart Nunnery. Of the 7 fiend sects, Shui Yang of Malevolent Earth sect was already dead and there was no signs of the thousand-faced assassin from Hidden Death sect. Apart from Su Zimo, the other 4 fiend heirs and the demoness were present. These nearly 20 cultivators could be considered as the top paragons of the Foundation establishment realm in the entire Tianhuang mainland. Apart from Su Zimo, the rest of the cultivators were at 8 Meridian Foundation establishment. The reason why something felt amiss was because the 7 paragons of the Immortal sects led by Hang Qiuyu of Sword Sect and Ao Yuxiao of Purple Firmament Sect as well as the 4 monks and 1 nun seemed to be joining forces as they surrounded the fiend heirs. Hang Qiuyu, Ao Yuxiao, Ju Chen. What's the meaning of this? Narrowing his gaze, Pang Yu asked slowly. Nothing much. Hang Qiuyu's lips curled up and he swayed his slender fingers. After destroying the fiend sects, we'll naturally choose someone from the Immortal and Buddhist sects to take on the Human Empress Palace's inheritance. The fiend heirs frowned. Including Su Zimo, there were only 6 of them. However, there were a total of 12 people when the paragons of the Immortal and Buddhist sects were added together. In other words, each of them had to face at least 2 paragons. Pang Yu of Overlord Palace was publicly acknowledged as the strongest among the fiend heirs. However, he would not dare to claim victory against Hang Qiuyu, Ao Yuxia, and Ju Chen, let alone if he had to deal with 2 people at one go. Demoness Ji raised her voice. The situation is clear right now with 3 distinct lineages and a total of 18 cultivators. We can just fight in pairs to decide the final victor to obtain the Human Empress Palace's inheritance. That will be considered as fairness. Monk Ju Chen's gaze swept past Su Zimo and paused for a brief moment before landing on Demoness Ji's face as he sneered, the situation will be even clearer after destroying the fiend sects. Fair. Ao Yuxiao shook his head. There's no fairness to speak of in front of the Human Empress Palace. Furthermore, fiends are evil beings that should be punished. Su Zimo, if you see that the situation is not right, don't be stubborn and leave this place quickly. Suddenly, Demoness Ji extended her finger and poked Su Zimo's waist, whispering to him. Chapter 441, Start of the Nightmare. Chapter 441, Start of the Nightmare. I was exposed. Although Su Zimo was expressionless on the surface, he was internally shocked. Don't deny it. It's definitely you. Demoness Ji inched over and whispered, you can't hide it from me. My instincts have always been keen. I don't know what you're talking about. Su Zimo replied indifferently before shifting his gaze towards the dozen or so figures standing at the outer perimeter of the Human Empress Palace. All of those cultivators were white-haired and old. Although their eyes were turbid and they seemed like they were at the end of their lives, there were still terrifying auras being exuded from them. They were sealers. Demonis G commented, "Don't worry, the sealers won't dare to strike given the circumstances." With the Immortal, Fiend, and Buddhist sects at a stalemate, as long as one of the factions strike and make use of their golden core powers, the sealers from the other two factions would also be implicated. By then, all parties would suffer great losses and perish. The 12 cultivators of the Immortal and Buddhist sects walked over slowly in 2 rows, keeping their eyes on the 6 people on the side of the Fiend sects, Suzimo included. Hang Qiuyu of Sword sect targeted Pang Yu of Overlord Palace right away. Ao Yuxiao of Purple Firmament sect targeted the Fiend Heir of Illusion Fiend cult as well. It was a battle between the strong. The successor of Snowdrift Valley of the Immortal sects was a cold woman in white robes. She controlled a silver needle with a frosty aura and specialized in penetrating protection talismans and inner armors. The nun of Clear Heart Nunnery wielded a long sword that shimmered coldly. The 2 female cultivators of the Immortal and Buddhist sects set their sights on Demonis G right away. Seems like I'll have to take care of that unknown person then. The successor of Heavenly Dipper sect smiled faintly. With a wave of his sleeves, a flying sword that shimmered with 5 spirit lights tore through the air and headed straight for Suzimo's head. Sweeping his head, Suzimo nodded to himself. It was as expected of the top supersects of Tianhuang mainland. With powerful foundations, most of their paragons were in possession of perfect spirit weapons. Suzimo was not flustered at all as he brushed past his storage bag, causing a saber to appear in his palms. Clang! His saber trembled and shone with 4 spirit patterns. It was a supreme-grade spirit saber that he had found in the Elixir Pool sect ruins. Since he wanted to hide his identity, there was naturally no way Suzimo would take out a weapon as signature as his blood quencher. Otherwise, he would be exposed by Demonis G and Bai Yu immediately. Although he could not make use of blood quencher, Suzimo had no intention of concealing the 5 stances of the Sea Calming Manual. The reason for that was because he knew that apart from him, there was another successor who knew of those 5 stances in the cultivation world. Phew! The flying sword tore through the air and shone with 5 spirit lights. Like a blazing sun that was filled with astral chi, it had an intimidating aura and arrived in an instant. Suzimo's expression did not change as the spirit energy in his body surged wildly, causing 7 spirit meridians to shine underneath his robes. "Ha, so you're a piece of trash." When Bai Yu swept his gaze and caught sight of that, he could not help but sneer. The other Fiend heirs let out disappointed expressions as well. On the other hand, the paragons of the Immortal and Buddhist sects looked relaxed. 7 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators were considered as rare geniuses in the cultivation world, and in the Great Zhou dynasty, they were even rarer. However, for the many paragons present, 7 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators were equivalent to trash that wouldn't be able to last for more than 10 breaths in a massive fight as such. Even for cultivators of other sects that were also at 8 Meridian Foundation establishment, they were far weaker than the successors of super sects, let alone 7 Meridian Foundation establishment cultivators. The Fiend heirs were already frustrated given the fact that they were in dire straits. When they saw this, they were even more upset. Shangguan Yu of Cloud Rain sect opened his folding fan and defended against 2 incoming flying swords while sneering, "Demonis G, your judgment is truly getting worse." Among the paragons present, only 2 of them did not show any contempt. One of them was Demonis G and the other was Monk Ju Chen, who had suffered a loss in the hands of Suzimo previously. Clang! An ear-piercing sound of metal clashing echoed in the void. Sparks flew as Suzimo swung his supreme-grade spirit saber against the incoming flying sword. Instantly, the astral chi on the sword was shattered by an immense force and dissipated on the spot. Buzz! The sword quivered unsteadily, showing signs of falling. The expressions of a few paragons changed when they saw this. Something isn't right. Such burst power, watch out, that man's a body-tempered cultivator. Swash! Suzimo had already vanished from the spot, and within a couple of steps, he arrived in front of the successor of Heavenly Dipper sect. His eyes shone brightly with a surging killing intent as he slammed down with his saber. The blade cut through the void at an extremely fast speed, and it was so forceful that heat was emitting from the saber. So fast. The successor of Heavenly Dipper sect realized that the situation was bad, and his hair stood on ends as his pupils constricted. He was too careless. With that moment of carelessness, he had lost the initiative and was now the disadvantaged party who was in danger. Swoosh. Slapping his storage bag, he swiftly pulled out a dark gold shield and injected spirit energy into it, lifting it above his head as it expanded. Clang. Another loud boom sounded when the saber clashed against the shield. Ooah! The light on the shield dimmed, as if the spirit light was severed by Suzimo's saber. With a dull grunt, the successor of Heavenly Dipper sect almost knelt onto the ground. As he lifted his shield with one arm, the successor gripped his other hand into a fist that was surrounded by astral chi. He threw a punch at Suzimo's chest like a long spear. This was the successor of one of the 9 immortal sects, Heavenly Dipper sect, no matter what. That was why he was still able to retaliate despite his current circumstances. Don't. Suddenly, Monk Ju Chen's voice sounded. However, it was too late. Suzimo's eyes flickered with mockery when he saw the successor of Heavenly Dipper sect throw out a punch as he did the same and received the incoming punch with a punch of his own. Bang! The two fists collided. The astral wind ruptured and the tides surged. Instantly, color drained from the successor of Heavenly Dipper sect's face as bead-like sweat droplets started flowing down from his head. Crack, crack, crack. A jarring sound of bones cracking echoed out. A few paragons turned towards the sound instinctively and their expressions changed. The successor of Heavenly Dipper sect's palm had already disappeared, turning into meat sludge that hung off his wrist. His entire arm was contorted into a weird shape with his bones protruding out of his flesh as it hung limply. With the meat hanging on his bones, it was a terrifying sight. Ah! The successor of Heavenly Dipper sect howled in pain as he collapsed to the ground, shivering with a fearful expression. With 2 slashes and a punch, the successor of Heavenly Dipper sect was crippled. The paragons present were not the only ones shocked, even the sealers that were watching were slightly agitated. In a fight between lions, one has to use their full strength. Since he underestimated his opponent, he has no one but himself to blame for landing in such a state. Was it truly just because he underestimated his opponent? Instantly, the tides on the battlefield had changed. Nobody expected that the successor of Heavenly Dipper sect would land in a tragic state with a crippled arm after a single exchange of blows. This meant that a paragon had already lost the rights to fight for the human emperor's inheritance and had to withdraw. The paragons present looked at the successor of Heavenly Dipper sect with a pitiable expression. Up till this point, the paragons had not realized that a nightmare that would continue to haunt them for many years to come had just begun. Compared to some of the others present, the fate of Heavenly Dipper sect's successor was considered lucky. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.